Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Kurenai Choose Naruto as a Husband Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Anko smiled and said, "Okay Gaki, time to leave." As she put her hand on his shoulder and both left in a swirl of leaves. When Naruto and Anko arrived back at their home, Kurenai was cooking and Anko said, "Now go take a shower. We will eat after you get out." Naruto nods and leaves as Anko walked into the kitchen. When she got there, Kurenai asked, "So?" Anko grimaced and said, "If people would have given him a chance when he was younger, I think he could have been Rookie of the Year. He mastered the first kata of that taijutsu already." Kurenai dropped her knife she was cutting vegetables with and said, "Are you kidding?" Anko said, "No, he's also nearly gotten the leaf exorcist also." Kurenai said, "Is that so? That's good." Anko smirked and leaned over and whispered, "So why are you going out of your way for him really? I mean, you are having me teach him your mother's style after all. Why are you so interested in him to share your family secret?" Kurenai closed her eyes and said, "I don't know. I mean, after that day I was saved, I had all kinds of dreams about who my knight in shining armor was. Then a few years later when I learned who he was, I could not believe it. Back then I honestly wanted to just repay him for helping me. Then I had to start watching over Hinata, and because of her crush on him I saw him a lot and my respect for him went up. Then the day I found him and thought he was dead, something just snapped in me. When I found he was just barely alive, I did not care but had to find a way to save him. He awoke and called me an angel. He asked me if I had come to take him away from his pain. My heart just ached so much that day, and I did not care that I was covered in his blood at the time. I just wanted to save him. After he was in the hospital, I took him a flower and put it in his hospital room." Anko was looking at her friend and waved her finger at Naruto, who had walked in and was with his mouth open trying to say something but couldn't. She said, "Go ahead Kurenai, finish what you're saying. Get it off your chest." Kurenai sighed and put her arms around her and said, "I don't know. After that day I would look around whenever he was nearby, and if I saw someone hurting him I would cast a genjutsu to help him get away or alert the Anbu. Then when I became a Junin sensei and Hinata was on my team, she told me what it was that she respected him for, and it just made my impression of him go up even more. To be able to go through all that he did and come out sane just showed me how strong he actually is. Then yesterday when I saw the pain in his eyes as I walked by and then found him in his apartment when it was broke into and destroyed, my heart hurt so much for him. It's the first time I had actually been there and seen where he lived and how he lived. I then followed him up to the Hokage monument and heard him talk to his dad on his head. He then said something and did something that struck me hard. He said, 'I live my life from this day forward with no regret. I live my life as if it is my last day alive, for one single step is all that is saving me from death. One step backwards and I shall fall to my eternal darkness, and one step forward moves me away from the edge. My life from this point will show me if my life is to move a step forward to safer ground or a step back to death. The people I meet and know in this world will be the ones who control my feet. Will they save me or doom me?' As he held his foot over the edge of the cliff. When he did and said that, I was frozen in my spot and I was afraid he would fall, and if he did fall I felt like my world would fall apart with him. I don't know why that feeling hit me. It scared me so much I went to the Hokage and asked him if it was true about Naruto killing and if he was really related to Sakura. I was hoping deep down the Hokage would say no, so that way I could say my feelings I had then were fake but they were true. I tried to go to sleep that night and forget it all, but I couldn't. I laid there and the storm that came felt like my emotions. That was why when I saw the flash of lightning I made the decision to save him from his pain. To become the angel he called me all those years ago. To move his feet away from the edge and move him further to safety." Anko said, "In your arms." Kurenai, who was so caught up in her turmoil, failed to realize what Anko truly meant and said, "Yes, in my arms, wait." "What?" As it hit her and she looked at her friend. Anko laughed and said, "Relax, Kurenai, you're going to blow a gasket. But seriously, it sounds like you got it bad for him. If he feels the same, are you going to go with him?" Kurenai sighed and closed her eyes and said, "I don't know, Anko. I am 19 and he's 14. I am a Junin and he's just a Genin. What if we started to get close and he later found out he does not like me?" As she felt a pair of arms wrap around her from behind. She said, "Okay, Anko, you can let me go." As she opened her eyes and looked to the side and saw Anko sitting there with a smirk on her face. Kurenai paled and looked over her shoulder and said, "Naruto, how much did you hear?" Anko said, "Gaki's got some serious stealth skills. I mean, he came into the kitchen not even a minute after I did and heard everything from the moment I leaned over to you. But how do you take such a quick shower, kid?" Naruto said, "My apartment water would only run for 4 minutes at a time, so I had to learn to take a shower quick," as he let go of Kurenai and stepped back from her. Kurenai turned and said, "Naruto." Naruto smiled and said, "I know. I feel something for you. I don't know what it is because I never felt anything like this before, but I want to try and learn what it is though. If you want to, we can just go one day at a time and see where it leads. What do you say?" Kurenai thought a moment and said, "I would like that, but what if things don't work for us? I mean, what if you decide you want someone else like Hinata?" Naruto smiled a sad smile and said, "Hinata and I are not going to be together. I know she likes me, but I could not tell her otherwise because it would destroy her. I don't know what happened to make her that way, but I know that if I were to tell her, she would close herself off. I tried once to talk to her and she did not show up to the academy for the next 3 days. I figured if I just acted like I did not notice, things would be okay and maybe she would outgrow it. I do think she a friend since she never hated me but never anything more." Kurenai looked at him and then after a few minutes asked, "What about the villagers? I mean, what if they?" She was stopped as Naruto put his finger to her lips and said, "I said I would live my life with no regret. If you want to do this, I will live my life under that rule always. We also don't have to tell anyone until we want to. The only ones who need to know are the ones in this house. Isn't that right, Iruka-sensei?" As he looked over his shoulder. Iruka smiled at his one-time student and said, "I suppose so, but how did you know I was here?" Naruto said, "Well, you smell of chalk." Iruka smiled sheepishly and Anko said, "So little Kur-chan, are you ready to grow up and be a big girl now?" As she smirked. Kurenai shot her friend a look and said, "Perhaps, but in baby steps," as she pulled Naruto forward and gave him a kiss on the lips, causing him to go wide-eyed a moment before closing his eyes. After they broke the kiss, both looked into the other's eyes and both passed out. Anko and Iruka blinked as they watched this and looked at each other and then back at both of them who were on the floor, and Anko said, "Holy shit," as she went to Kurenai. Iruka walked over to check Naruto and he said, "What the hell?" as he looked at Naruto. Anko looked at Iruka and asked, "What is it, Iruka?" Iruka said, "Check out his neck." Anko walked over and looked and said, "What the hell is that?" Iruka, who looked at Kurenai, said, "I don't know, but look, Kurenai has one also." A voice from behind both of them said, "It's Naruto heritage," making both Iruka and Anko look, and the third Hokage was standing there. Anko asked, "What do you mean his heritage?" The third sighed and said, "Since I take it you are aware of some of what's going on, I will just say that Naruto mother is from the land of Whirlpool. That symbol right there is called a spira. The Uzumaki family were the founding family in Whirlpool and they were known for their loyalty, especially to those they love. What I was told was that when they find love, and I mean true love, their first kiss causes what you just witnessed. Them passing out and getting that mark on their neck. What it does is link them together in life and death." Iruka asked, "What do you mean, sir?" The third said, "Naruto mother did not die from childbirth. She died because her husband died. The moment one dies, the other will die, so that way they will be together in both life and death. Kurenai and Naruto are now the same way. They both love each other deeply, but they did not realize the true depth they did. That was why when they kissed it happened. I am classifying this in SS rank secret and is not to be told to anyone, including both Naruto and Kurenai. I don't want them to feel that they have to love each other yet. I want them to fall all the way on their own. Is that understood? Anko said. So you're telling me that when either Naruto or Kurenai die, the other will as well? The third nods and Anko sighed and said, well shit, this is great. The third smiled and said, oh, it's not that bad if you think about it. This way neither will ever feel the sadness of death of losing their most precious person. I am sure you and Iruka would not want to live without each other if you could. Iruka asked, how did you know about this, sir? I mean, how did you know Naruto was here? The third said, I have been keeping an eye on Naruto since he arrived yesterday because of what happened with his first kill. I saw him and Kurenai on the monument and I was watching a few minutes ago to see what was going on, so as soon as I saw them pass out I instantly shushin here to tell you both what happened so you don't freak out and alert the rest of this village, because I know both want to keep this secret. Now I know Naruto is keeping secrets from me and I understand why. His use of that, just you being one of them. I have responsibilities to his father that he left for me for him, and I can't break my promise to him, so Naruto will have to wait until he is 16 or a Junin. Now I don't want Naruto or Kurenai to know I know, so don't tell them about me coming here or what I have said. The mark on their neck will be gone by morning when they awake again. As I said, the only thing I know is that mark does is unites them in life and death, but if either starts acting strangely, let me know. Understand? I will then inform them of the mark and all, but I want them to have some happiness and I don't want them to fear life either, so please don't tell them. Anko sighed and said, fine, but you have better help keep them a secret. I don't want either to be hurt by idiots. You know we have a surplus of them. The third smiled and looked at Iruka and said, you know I do everything I can for Naruto, sir. If this makes him happy in life, so I will keep it a secret as long as it does not hurt them. Kurenai has been like a sister to me over the years and Naruto a little brother, so yeah, I am happy for them. Anko said, well, we better get them to bed and I could always do a few more photos opportunities. Iruka smirked and grabbed Naruto as Anko grabbed Kurenai and took them to Naruto room. The third smirked and left. The next morning when Kurenai woke up, she moaned and arched her back and looked around and blinked and thought, what the hell am I doing in this room, Aegean? As she looked and saw she was laying on Naruto Aegean. She then looked and blew back with a nosebleed. Naruto felt something move and slowly opened his eyes and saw blood on his chest and noticed he was without a shirt, or pants. In fact, the only thing he had on was his boxers. He heard a groan and looked over and went wide-eyed as he was blew back with a nosebleed. Kurenai slowly got up off the floor and saw Naruto now had a nosebleed as well, and she looked at herself and screamed, Anko, as she quickly grabbed a bathrobe and put it on to cover her since she was only in a bra and panties. Anko smirked as she looked at the photo she had taken the night before as she quickly left the house. Naruto, when he woke up again, saw Kurenai ranting about killing Anko and he asked, what happened? Kurenai said, Anko pulled a prank on us, as she stopped ranting and looked at Naruto. Naruto said, so nothing happened last night? I don't remember anything after kissing. Kurenai said, no, nothing else happened. If it had I would be able to tell quickly, so don't worry. Naruto sighed and said, good. Kurenai shot him a look and he quickly said, I just meant I wanted to take our time. Kurenai eyes softened and said, okay, well, let's get ready for the day. I am sure my team is waiting for me. As she left the room. Naruto sighed and got up and got moving, and he thought, I wonder why I passed out last night. It was a great kiss though. As he was embraced. Kurenai, who was getting dressed, suddenly felt embarrassed and she thought, why do I feel embarrassed? Naruto, who was walking out of his room, suddenly felt confused. Just then Kurenai walked in the hall and asked as she saw Naruto face, "What's wrong, Naruto?" Naruto said, "I don't know. I was just coming out of the room here and suddenly felt confused for some reason but I don't know why." Kurenai said, "That's funny. I was feeling embraced earlier for no reason also. Well anyways I got to get going. I got to meet Kiba Hinata and Shino." As she mentally shivered thinking of Shino's bugs. Naruto said, "What the hell? I just felt disgusted by something." Kurenai went wide-eyed and thought, are we reading each other's emotions? If so, how? Let's test this a moment. As she thought of her one true fear. Naruto looked around and Kurenai asked, "What's wrong, Naruto?" Naruto said, "Nothing." Kurenai said, "Tell me the truth, Naruto." Naruto sighed and said, "I was just feeling terrified for some reason." Kurenai said, "So I was right." Naruto blinked and Kurenai said, "You're feeling confused now?" And he nods yes. She said, "Somehow we are reading each other's emotions. I don't understand how. Maybe it has something to do with the Kyuubi or maybe it's just someone's sick way of saying we're soulmates," with a smile on her face. Naruto asked, "Do you think we should tell someone?" Kurenai said, "No, since I doubt anyone can do anything about it anyways we will just have to get used to it. Well I am going to be late so I must be going. Have a good day Narukun." As she kissed him and felt warm in her chest. Naruto also felt warm and said, "Have a good day Tenshi," as he smiled. Kurenai smiled also as she left and Naruto turned into Iruka and left. When he was away from everyone he turned back into himself and made it about 20 feet when Sakura appeared and said, "Naruto, why were you just hanged into Iruka?" Naruto sighed and said, "Oh Sakura-chan. I was just preparing for the Chunin exam by working on all my jutsu with my better chakra control and I have to do the basics also so I hanged into Iruka to try and see if anyone notice. I guess I am not as good as I thought I would be since you saw through it," as he rubbed the back of his head. Sakura said, "No, I just saw you change back into yourself so I thought I would ask. So are you ready for the exams?" Naruto said, "Of course I am. I am going to be Hokage someday so I can't let some exam stop me." Sakura hit him upside the head and said, "Stop being such an idiot. I am going to look for Sasuke-kun. At least he will take these exams serious." As she stormed off. Naruto sighed and he turned around and went to practice chakra control and when lunch came he ate some ramen but stopped on his way to train some more before Anko showed up when he saw the Hokage standing there and he said, "Hey old man, what are you doing here?" The third chuckled and said, "Well I thought I would take some time to walk around the village before the exams and since I have not had a chance to talk to you I thought I would see how you're doing. Will you walk with me?" Naruto said, "Sure old man and I am doing great," as he walked beside the third. The third chuckled and said, "That's good. So how is things at your new place?" Making Naruto pale. Before Naruto could say anything the third said, "I went by your place and saw it Naruto and when I was going to send Anbu out looking for you when Anko told me that you were okay and that you found lodging somewhere but she would not tell me where." Naruto said, "Yeah. Someone offered me a place to stay but I don't want them getting hurt for helping me so I don't want anyone knowing." The third nods and said, "Very noble of you though I do want you and the person you are staying with to sign a paper in my office for my records only staying you can stay there so if something does happen." Naruto sighed and said, "Alright, I will ask the person but I don't want anyone to know." "Okay old man." The third said, "Of course Naruto. Now that we got that out of the way I want to ask you something. I got a mission for you Naruto if you will accept it. It's as an SS rank mission and you are not to tell anyone about it, not even if you were to have children and told them. Would you do it for me?" Naruto said, "For you old man, sure but are you sure you want me to do this? I mean why not someone else?" The third placed his hands on Naruto's shoulder and both disappeared in a swirl of leaves and appeared back in the Hokage office and he locked the door and put up a privacy jutsu. When he was done, he said, Naruto, this mission could result in the destruction of the Leaf Village. There are people with power in this village that I can no longer trust. As such, I have recorded all the secrets of this village, including my will, in a scroll. I don't know who I can trust besides you. Because of your situation, the people I am afraid of would never approach you, so that is why I am choosing you for this mission. Do you understand? Naruto had a serious face and said, I understand, old man. The third smiles and said, okay, this mission is in case of my death. Now before you say anything, I hope I don't die for a very long time, but I am not a young man and I am not as strong as I used to be. As everyone knows, I have already retired once and the Yondaime was my chosen successor. Since he died, I took back over, but I have not found anyone currently in Konoha who exhibits the will of fire that currently qualifies. You exhibit the will of fire, but you are not qualified yet because you're not strong enough or old enough. As such, I am certain that when I die, I will not have named a successor. The council will elect someone and I do not know who. There are those I would like to see take over, but I cannot name them because of personal reason that I won't say. The mission I am giving you is the key to the secrets of Konoha and my will. My will includes the summoning contract for my family as well as instructions for Konohamaru when he gets older. I only want him to have them if the Hokage that is chosen has the will of fire, because I do not want him to respect a Hokage who will destroy Konoha. Naruto said, so you want me to keep this scroll a secret? The third said, no, what I want to do is have you memorize the key, and if you, the person I believe who would make a great Hokage who exhibits the will of fire, deem the person worthy, then you may reveal it. If the person does not, then you are to remain quiet. The secrets in this scroll can destroy Konoha if they fell into the wrong hands. Do you understand the mission I am placing before you? Naruto was quite a moment and said, I understand and accept. The third smiled and said, good, now before I tell you how to do all of it, sign this paper. As he pulled one out of his desk drawer. Naruto quickly signed it and the third said, good, now how this will work is. When Naruto arrived at the training ground to practice some more, he saw Anko sitting there eating dango and she said, alright, let's continue the training gaki. The rest of the time before the exams flew by for Naruto. Training in the morning with chakra control and learning the taijutsu from Anko had Naruto increasing very fast. The day of the first exam, Anko showed Naruto how to cancel the weight jutsu but told him not to unless he had to. In the teacher's lounge, Kurenai was sitting in the room with the other Junin instructors and Asuma said, what's wrong, Kurenai? You seem tense. Kurenai said, I guess I am just nervous about our teams. I wonder if I made the right choice in letting them join, as she felt Naruto nervousness. Asuma said, well, you won't have to worry long, they will be back soon. Especially with who is the proctor for the first exam. Kurani asked, oh, and who is that? Guy said, Ibiki. Kakashi said, the sadist. Kurenai said, Ibiki. As she tried to remember what Anko told her about him. Asuma said, I am not surprised you do not know, but he is the head of the torture and interrogation department. He a professional of the mind and how to manipulate it. Kakashi chuckled and said, well, my team will pass. The one thing I can tell you is that Ibiki never had to deal with the likes of my team before. Sakura is a very bright girl and Sasuke won't let a little test stand in his way of getting stronger, and then there's Naruto. Kurenai narrowed her eyes and asked, what makes you say that? What's so special about him? Kakashi said, well, Naruto is the #1 hyperactive surprise ninja. Nobody can make him back down. Kurenai said, so who's the best on your team then, and who do you think will pass the furthest? Kakashi said, Sasuke. He will be the only one to make it to the finals on my team. Kurenai said, really? What makes you so sure the other two won't make it? Kakashi sighed and said, Sakura is strong mentally, but when it comes to actual physically, she's not strong enough for the final exams yet, but the experience will help her. As for Naruto, he's a one-trick pony. Overpower his enemy with Kujbunchus and let the number beat them down. His taijutsu is non-existent and his chakra control is poor. I notice he is working on that, but I don't believe he's improved much. As for his speed is slow. The only thing he really is good at is stealth and stamina. Kurenai thought, jackass, if you would actually pay attention to Naruto you would notice he's a lot better than that. Naruto for his part passed the first part of the exam like he first did in the show, and now he stood outside the forest of death. Anko appeared and said, "Alright you Gakis. This here is training area 44, also known as the forest of death." Naruto put his hands on his hips and shaked his butt like a pansy and said in a girly voice, "This is the forest of death." And he stood up straight and said, "Come on chicken, can't you come up with a better name than that?" Everyone snickered until Anko threw a kunai at Naruto and appeared behind him and whispered in his ear as she slipped a note in his pocket, "Don't get hurt or I will kill you for hurting Kurenai. The note in your pocket's from her. Don't read it until you make it to the tower." As she licked the blood of his cheek and said for everyone to hear, "The loudest one of the bunch is usually the weakest." Flash forward to the tower. Iruka appeared in front of Team 7 in a puff of smoke and explained the reason for the test. He then led them to the area where the test was to be taken, and the Hokage gave the speech about why the test is a substitute for war, and then the proctor saying there's a preliminary. As Sasuke stood ready to face his first opponent, Naruto reached into his pocket and pulled out the letter Anko had gave him, and while everyone was watching Sasuke he slowly opened it and read, "Dear Naruto-kun, I want you to show these people that you are better than they think you are. I know you have your secrets you want to hide, but I want you to win. I believe in you and expect you to go to the finals. Please don't let my faith in you be misguided. Don't forget my gift scroll I gave you also. Love, Tenshi." Naruto folded the letter and slipped it in his jacket and closed his eyes a moment and said, "Hey Kakashi-sensei." Getting Kakashi attention. Kakashi said, "Yes Naruto," as he was watching Sasuke. Naruto said, "I will be back in a moment. I need to use the restroom," as he walked off. Kakashi glanced at Naruto and thought, what's up with him? He seems off. As Naruto walked away. As Naruto was walking toward the stairs he passed Team 8 and Kiba said, "Where you going dead last?" Running scared. Naruto stopped and looked at Kiba from the side of his face and said, "I am just going to the restroom Kiba." Kiba said, "Whatever dead last, you should just give up since you're the weakest person here." Naruto felt his temper flare and was about to say something when Kurenai said, "Naruto, save it for the fights," as Naruto looked into her eyes. Kiba said, "What sensei, you think he can win?" Kurenai said, "Kiba, I don't know how strong Naruto is since he's not on my team, but I was just making sure neither of you get disqualified for fighting before your matches." Kiba growled and said, "You lucky, for now dead last," as he looked back at the match. Naruto narrowed his eyes and looked at Kurenai and nodded slowly as he walked down the stairs out of the room. Up on the Hokage balcony the third narrowed his eyes and quickly replaced himself with a mudclone and left the room. Naruto walked down the hall and he reached into his weapons pouch and said, "You can come out old man, I know you're there," as he pulled out a scroll. The third chuckled and said, "So how did you detect me?" Naruto said, "You're tobacco. You're the only person I know who smokes that particular kind. I've grown to care for it over the years. Even smoked it once." The third chuckled and said, "So that was you who did that? I was not for sure who it was who took my stash. So what are you doing here Naruto when you should be with the rest of the competitors?" Naruto closed his eyes and said, "Do you know anything about seals old man?" The third looked curious and said, "A little, why?" Naruto took off his shirt and jacket and said, "That snake guy did something to the seal." The third narrowed his eyes and said, "Show me." Naruto channeled chakra to it and the third said, "I see, I can fix this if you want. I imagine your control is shot right now." Naruto said, "Yeah, I can't really control anything right now and someone wants me to show everyone how good I really am. I want to show her she's right to do so. Will you fix it? The third held his hand out and flames covered it and he said, "This will hurt for a moment," as he slammed his hand into Naruto's stomach and he winced as he flew back a little. After he stood up he smiled and said, "Thanks old man. I need to get ready but I want you to know something. Something I have been hiding from you. I know who." The third held up his hand and said, "I have known for a while Naruto that you know. I wanted to tell you myself but I promised your parents I wouldn't until you were 16 or a Junin. I know you have Thier scrolls so I understand you not telling me. I figured if you wanted to keep it a secret I would also and just act like I had planned on until you reached one of those 2 points. Do what you must to make them and whoever she is proud. Are you sure you want to do this because once you do then everyone will know?" Naruto said, "Yeah old man, I think it's time I prove I am me and not Kyuubi." The third nods and said, "Very well, I must be going and good luck Naruto Namikaze," as he left in a puff of smoke. Naruto looked where he was and smiled as he walked over and picked up a pack of tobacco and rolling papers and he laughed and said, "Old man, I will show everyone," as he opened the scroll he pulled out earlier. Back in the arena Hyatt said, "Okay, now on to the next match with Kiba Inazaku and Naruto Uzuma." The third walked out of a side door and the one on the stage melted into mud and the third said, "Sorry for the inconvenience but an important matter had come up. We will take a few moment break before the next match. Kakashi, may I speak with you?" as he lead him out of the room. Kakashi blinked and followed to where the third was and the third said, "So how did the ceiling go?" Kakashi said, "Okay, except Orochimaru showed up. I have Sasuke under Anbu protection right now. Has something happened?" The third said, "Well I want to know why you did not inform me that Orochimaru had messed with Naruto's seal," making Kakashi go wide-eyed. Kakashi said, "I did not know sir. He seemed fine when he arrived right before the matches." The third said, "Did you even talk to him? I mean you should have been able to tell something was wrong when he was standing right beside you on the balcony but you did not even look. I already took care of the problem but I am putting you under advisement. Once the exams are over I am looking at how you are training all 3 of your students. I have heard things from other Junins that have not pleased me and if I find them true you will be doing D-rank mission personally with Guy watching you making sure you do them. Do I make myself clear?" Kakashi paled and said, "Yes sir." The third nods and asked, "So what are Naruto chances against Kiba and I want the truth?" Kakashi thought a moment and said, "Not very good sir. Kiba and Akamaru from what I hear are like most in his clan, strong-spirited, fast, and deadly at their clan jutsu. Naruto has the Kajbunshin as his one attack and that's it." The third narrowed his eyes and said, "So you mean to tell me that you have not taught him anything in the last 6 months?" Kakashi said, "Naruto chakra control is so bad I am afraid to teach him any ninjutsu sir besides tree climbing." The third asked, "What does chakra control have to do with taijutsu, speed, strength, or anything else besides ninjutsu? Surely you don't expect me to believe that you have not even considered trying to improve him in those areas. I mean I have seen that Sasuke has your weights on when he returned from wave and as you know there is more to being a ninja than just ninjutsu." Kakashi looked down and said, "I have no answer for my failings sir." The third sighed and said, "Kakashi, if Naruto passes this test I am going to have someone I trust oversee the rest of his training for the finals. It's obvious you don't give a damn about Naruto," as he walked back into the room. Kakashi sighed as he looked down before he walked back in the room. The third said, "All right, I am sorry for the wait. We had some genins who were still in the forest causing trouble not realizing the test was over for them so now we may continue." Hyatt said, "Will Kiba Inazaku and Naruto Uzumaki please come to the arena floor?" Kiba jumped over the rail with Akamaru in his coat and said, "Yahoo boy, we got an easy match," as he landed and walked to the center of the ring. Hyatt looked around and said, "Would Naruto Uzumaki please come to the floor?" A voice said, I already am. As a cloak of invisibility fell beside Kiba as Naruto smirked, shocking everyone by his ability with the genjutsu that fooled everyone and his new cloths. Naruto was wearing a pair of black pants and a red shirt with a black ninja vest. He had 2 holsters on each leg, black combat boots, several scrolls inside his vest that you could see. H's shirt was sleeveless and he had 3 different headbands. The one on his left arm was a Konoha headband, the one on his right was a Whirlpool one, each on a white sash, and the one on his head was a Konoha one on a blue sash. To top this outfit off, he had a long cloak that was also sleeveless, but the bottom of it was a deep blue with a whirlpool drawn on it, and it went up to middle of his back before turning to a pale blue before it turned into a beach scene as it showed palm trees waving in the wind with waves crashing onto the beach. On top of the scene in the sky above the island was the kanji for maelstrom. Naruto walked over toward the railing and walked up the side and stood on the rail as he took off his cloak and said, Kurenai-sensei, would you mind holding this for me? Someone special to me had this made for me and I do not want it damaged, and I am afraid a few people up here might set it on fire like they wanted to do my orange ones in the past. Kurenai smiled and said, Sure Naruto. I can do that for you. As she took it and folded it across her arm. Naruto smiled and backflipped off the rail and landed on the ground and said, Alright, I guess I am ready to beat you, dog boy, but don't cry when I do. Hyatt said, The next match begins, now, as he jumped back. Naruto slowly started to walk around Kiba, who was looking at Naruto, and said, So Kiba, since you're an Inazaku, that means you use your dog as a partner, have heightened senses and a short temper. Kiba growled and said, You should just give up dead last, you can't beat me. Naruto smiled and he reached into his vest and pulled out a scroll and said, In Wave Country I saw Kakashi-sensei do this, so I thought I would copy the copycat. As he bit his thumb and wiped it across the scroll before he quickly closed it and slammed it into the ground and said, Ninjutsu summoning, Kitsune headhunter jutsu, and seals spread out across the floor, and suddenly 5 foxes burst through the ground trying to bite Kiba, who jumped back. Kiba said, What the hell was that? I never seen or heard of anything like that before. Up in the stands several people also were wondering the same thing. Kakashi thought, how the hell did he do that? I never expected anything like this from Naruto. Also, how did he get a fox contract? Is he in contact with the Kyuubi? Naruto smiled and said, So how do you like my version? You see, normally you would have to have a summoning contract to use summon animals. That is, if these were summon animals. As each fox burst into smoke revealing another Naruto. Kakashi said, I see. So he used the Kajbunshin jutsu and henge to make them look like foxes and then used the distraction of the scroll while he made them. Naruto, who was down on the floor, said, Actually, no Kakashi-sensei. I started studying a little bit about seals right after I graduated from the academy, and I saw where people could seal weapons and other items in scrolls, so I thought if they could do it with weapons, why could they not do it with Kajbunshins hanged as weapons? It took me a while, but I finally figured it out. Then after the wave mission where I saw you summon dogs to catch Zabuza, I thought I would try it that way also. Pretty good copy if I do say so myself. Kiba growled and said, Shut up dead last. You may have surprised me with that trick, but now that I have seen it, you won't fool me Aegean. Naruto said, Good, since I threw you off your game, let me show you something else I learned. This time from a demon named Zabuza. As he threw a whole handful of smoke bombs on the ground covering the entire floor. Suddenly a kunai was thrown out of the smoke at the ceiling with a smoke bomb attached to it also, as it stuck in smoke covered the roof. Everyone looked at it but saw nothing besides the kunai and smoke bomb until they both could not be seen because of the smoke. Then Naruto voice said, Now Kiba, I have taken away your ability to use sight with the smoke. Now you have to use your ears and nose to find me, but the thing is Kiba. I also have heightened senses. After all, I did detect a master of silent killing before Kakashi-sensei did and alerted the team, forcing him to use a replacement with a white rabbit who had been raised indoors. Sakura may have yelled at me and called me an idiot for alerting the team, but had I not, then Zabuza would have killed Kakashi. The sad thing was he still got Hiscaught in a water prison jutsu and I had to save him. He then thanked Sasuke and Sakura and I had to haul his back to the client's house because he passed out from chakra exhaustion. Isn't that right, Kakashi-sensei? Everyone on the balcony looked at Kakashi, who looked down, and Kurenai thought, serves you right, Kakashi. Kiba growled inside the smoke and said, like that matters, you're here acting all big and bad and yet you won't even fight me. Naruto voice came from the smoke and said, why should I fight you when you're going to kill Akamaru for me? Making everyone wide-eyed. Kiba growled and the smoke started to clear and he said, I would never, and he stopped as there on the floor were 6 Akamaru. Kiba said, come here, Akamaru. And all 6 ran toward him, making him jump back, and they all stopped. Kiba narrowed his eyes and said, this trick won't work dead last. I can smell the real Akamaru. Just then 3 of the dogs lifted their hind legs and farted, and then started running around him. Everyone in the stands held their noses and a few snickered. Anko burst out laughing as she rubbed the tears from her eyes. Kiba ran and kicked one of the dogs and it burst into smoke. Kiba said, now there is only the real Akamaru and 4 more fakes. One of the dogs said, but the trick is this. Is Akamaru down here with me and the rest of my clones, or is he up on the ceiling with an exploding tag strapped on him? Making everyone look up and see an Akamaru tied to the ceiling with a tag on him engaged. Kiba screamed, Akamaru, as he looked up and then kicked the one who said it, making it burst into smoke. Another Akamaru said, there you go, Kiba, get angry. But know this, if you guess wrong then you hurt your companion. You are running out of options of where the real one is, and since I already told him I would use the exploding tag I placed on you if he alerted you, he won't help. Kiba growled and said, why are you doing this dead last? Why put Akamaru in danger? The dog said, I will explain it, Kiba. You put Akamaru in danger yourselves. You act like you're the only one who does the work. I noticed during the first exam he did all the work. Without him you're useless. You need him to be the target for you so you can look good. You're no different than Sasuke. Think everyone else is just a stepping stone for you. That is why I decided to do this. Not to mention I am keeping my team out of danger, which is what a chunin or squad leader is supposed to do, dumbass. Kiba growled and drew back to kick the one who talked, except at the last moment when he kicked, a puff of smoke hit, showing a replacement, and Akamaru was sent flying across the room, hitting the wall. Kiba went wide-eyed and ran to the dog, who whimpered before passing out. Kiba said, it's all right, boy, I got you. I will make him pay. As he stood up and took out a kunai and charged all the remaining Akamaru and cut them all down except the last one. When he stabbed, it had blood spray everywhere. The one who passed out changed back into Naruto and said, good job, Kiba, you killed him. Kiba looked down at his dog and started to cry, and Naruto said, if you give up you got time to save him, or does he really not mean more to you than a stupid exam? Kiba said, all right, I give up. Naruto said, good, and snapped his fingers, and Akamaru, who was in Kiba's hand, burst into blood and fell to the floor, shocking him. The one on the roof also went up in smoke, as did the other ones. Kiba looked around and said, where's Akamaru at? Naruto said, Kurenai-sensei, would you mind holding the jacket in your arms up for everyone to see? As he looked over his shoulder at her, making everyone look. Kurenai held the jacket in her hand up. It transformed into Naruto in his new cloths, who had Akamaru sitting in his arms eating some meat, and Naruto, who was on the floor, burst into blood, and the one holding Akamaru said, I may be an idiot sometimes, but I would never hurt a leaf shinobi or their friends. The entire time you were in the arena fighting was nothing but smoke and mirrors with a Kajbunshin and 2 blood clones, and I had taken Akamaru off the floor right at the beginning of the match to make sure he was not hurt. Kurenai looked at Kakashi and said, one trick pony, huh? As she laughed at the shocked look on Kakashi's face. Hyatt said, winner, Naruto Uzumaki. Kiba growled and said, why did you help him, sensei? Kurenai said, I didn't. I just held his jacket, but I could detect the henge when I touched it, but since it was not my battle, I let things work out. If you had stayed calm and used the skills I taught you, then you would have been able to tell yourself. I do have to admit, Naruto did say one thing I agree with Kiba. You do rely on Akamaru too much, but your teammates also have the same trouble. You all three rely on your bloodlines too much. Kiba looked down and Naruto said, "So Kakashi-sensei, what did you think of my match?" Kakashi sighed and said, "I was impressed. You had even me fooled as well as my Sharingan." Naruto said, "Good, then what I learned from Haku was useful and now I know how to beat Sasuke. The Sharingan is useless if it can't see you or keep up with you." As he took a seat beside Sakura, who was gaping at him. Naruto looked at her a moment and put his hand under her chin and closed her mouth and said, "You're going to swallow a fly." Sakura snapped out of it and hit him upside the head, saying, "Idiot." Kakashi thought, "I think I have really underestimated Naruto. He not only figured out a way to fool an entire room full of people but did it with nothing more than henge, replacement, and Kajbunshin. I should have known better since he did the same thing when we faced Zabuza." The rest of the matches went just as they did in the show. Ino and Sakura tied after Naruto cheered her on. Nothing changed until Gaara went to kill Lee after the match. As Guy and the others jumped over the arena, a kunai with a smoke bomb on it hit beside Gaara, drawing everyone's attention, and a few moments later he was sent flying into the wall by Naruto, who appeared in the smoke, stopping the attack. Naruto ignored everyone. They looked at him and where he was a moment before and he said, "Man, I love Shushin." Gaara slowly stood up and said, "I will have your blood. Mother wants your blood." Naruto narrowed his eyes as he saw the bruise on Gaara's face from where he hit Gaara being healed by the sand, and he looked at his hand seeing the bruise also heal and said, "I think I understand you now, Gaara. Kabuto said you came back from every mission uninjured, or was it you were injured and just healed before you returned? Now that I think about it, you're not what you seem, are you?" Everyone was looking at Naruto and Kakashi said, "That's enough, Naruto, the match is over and Lee is safe, don't start a fight," as he put his hand on Naruto's shoulder. Naruto jerked his arm away and said, "No, Kakashi-sensei. Lee saved Sakura-chan when we were in the Forest of Death while Sasuke and I were out thanks to Orochimaru. For that I owe him my thanks, but Gaara here is not normal. The way the others on his team look at him, even now, I know those looks personally." All the adults looked at Naruto with narrowed eyes and Naruto said, "So tell me, your sand defense." Kabuto info said your teammates were your siblings, so that means if it's a bloodline then they should have it, but they don't, so that means something about you is different. What is it? Gaara grabbed his head and said, "Mother says you are different also. I can feel your power. Mother wants to bath in your blood." As he released some ki as his sand swirled around him. The third said, "Enough, both of you. I want you both to stop this instant and save it for the finals, or I will disqualify you both. Normally I would have you all draw for your opponents, but since everyone is so high-strung I will instead make them a surprise. The finals will be in 1 month. You will have to prepare for any of those who have passed. There will be no fighting between any of you before then. Do you all understand?" Naruto said, "Yes, Hokage-sama," as he kept his eye on Gaara. Gaara sent Shushin to his siblings and the third said, "Everyone is dismissed." Kakashi, who was still beside Naruto, put his hand on his shoulder and both left with Leaf Shushin. They appeared in one of the rooms in the tower and Kakashi said, "What was that about back there, Naruto? I gave you an order to stand down." Naruto said, "Gaara like me, Kakashi-sensei." Kakashi asked, "What do you mean?" Naruto said, "You did not notice the bruise I gave him when I punched him. It was healing as fast as the one on my hand. I think he's got a demon inside of him." Kakashi closed his eyes and said, "Naruto, rapid healing does not mean someone has a demon. The fact is it could be a bloodline and his siblings may have it, or it may be a new one. You should not start pointing fingers at people." Kakashi was interrupted when the third appeared and said, "That's enough, Kakashi. Naruto, while I do admit I do believe Gaara may also be a Jinchuriki, you should not bring attention to it because it will also bring attention to you. Now will you explain to me why you were calling Gaara out on it? Naruto said. When Gaara was fighting Lee, I felt Kyuubi, sir. Making both look at him. The third asked, what do you mean you felt Kyuubi, Naruto? Naruto said, it was like back on the bridge. I heard his voice when I used his chakra screaming for revenge against Haku for killing Sasuke. When I was watching Gaara match I felt it stirring Aegean and I heard whispers of Shukaku in my head. I don't know why but I felt like the way the whispers were sounding was like the villagers when they talk about me and don't think I can hear them. Like they're better than me and I am just dirt at their feet. The third sighed and said, alright Naruto, have you heard this voice any other time? Naruto said, no, this is only the second time. The third said, very well. I will have Jiraiya train you over the month between now and the finals. Kakashi said, Jiraiya-sama, why? The third looked at Kakashi and said, Kakashi, you have obviously not paid attention to your team the least little bit. Did you know that while you were on the bridge Naruto had to face two merc by himself and kill them to save the client's daughter and grandson? Kakashi eye got wide and looked down and said, no sir, I did not. The third said, you seem so preoccupied that you have not even noticed that. It was this reason I had planned on Naruto to have another teacher to learn from if he passed, which he did very well if I may say so. The reason I am having Jiraiya do it though is because he was the Yondaime teacher and the only other person who knows about how the seal works better than me. He can tell if Kyuubi voice is because of him finally awakening or if the seal is weakening. He might be able to modify it where you won't have to hear it Aegean. Now I don't want anything that has been said here to leave this room. If it does I will know. Now Kakashi, you better go check on Sasuke while I take Naruto to see Jiraiya. Kakashi nods and leaves in a swirl of leaves. The third waited a moment and said, are you sure it said Shukaku Naruto? Naruto nods and the third said, so the rumors are true. Gaara is a Jinchuriki like you for the one-tailed demon Ikibi no Shukaku. I had heard rumors about it but I did not believe them at the time. Alright, back in the arena, was that really Shushin or Hiraishin Naruto? Naruto said, Hiraishin. I used the smoke bombs to hide the yellow flash sir. The third chuckled and said, well that was smart and had I not know about you having that just you I would have believed you. Now I want you to come to my office around 4 this afternoon to meet Jiraiya. Naruto said, sure old man. The third chuckled and said, well I must be going. This room is just outside where me and you talked earlier. I trust you can find your way out. Naruto nods and walks out and the third leaves in a swirl of leaves. As Naruto walked back into the arena Sakura was looking at him and said, what was that about Naruto? Naruto said, what Sakura-chan? Sakura said, picking a fight with that sand team. You heard what Team 8 said about them. Naruto scratched the back of his head and winced as he looked behind him feeling something bite him and saw nothing and said, I was just getting info on one of my opponents for the final Sakura-chan. Sakura huffed and said, well don't. You at it. As she turned and walked over toward Ino. Anko walked up beside him and said, nice match Gaki. Naruto said, thanks but I suddenly don't feel so good. As he fell face first onto the floor. Anko screamed, medic. As she bent down over him and Team 8 and 10 ran over to where he was along with Sakura. Kurenai asked, what's wrong Anko? Anko said, I don't know. I told him he did good on his match and he said thanks and he suddenly felt bad and passed out. As she started to check him over. A couple of medics came over and Anko saw them pause a moment and said, either help this kid or I will feed you to my snakes, causing both to start working on Naruto. One of the medics said, shit, how is he still alive? Making everyone look at him. Anko asked, what do you mean? The medic said, he's been poisoned, snake venom from an asp I say. We can heal him if we had some venom to make an antidote but. Anko quickly went through some hand signs and said, Kuchio's no jutsu. And an asp appeared and Anko grabbed it and said, quick, take a sample from him. The medic nods and drains some from the snake's fangs and Kiba said, so you attacked him. Kurenai said, no, Anko would not attack Naruto with a snake. Sakura said, it must be Orochimaru. He must have sent one after Naruto to finish him off, making everyone look at her. Anko said, that's just like him. He probably thinks Naruto will get in his way later and tried to get rid of him. Ino asked, how do you know so much about him? Anko said, I was his apprentice before he left the village and became a nuke nin. Now hurry up, damn it, and save the Gaki. A few minutes later the medic said, there, he should be fine in a little while, but I would suggest having him rest a few days. Kurenai placed her hand on her heart and thought, I can't believe my heart is racing like this. I know I was worried for him, but to be scared so much. Asuma asked, are you alright, Kurenai? Kurenai said, yes, Asuma, just my nerves is all. Asuma said, yeah, kids, lucky Anko was here, huh? Kurenai nods and walks by everyone and said, Asuma, would you mind taking my team back to the village and Sakura also? I am going to take Naruto to the hospital to get checked out Aegean to make sure these guys got it all and also check on Hinata. Asuma said, sure, Kurenai. Kurenai and Naruto both left in a swirl of leaves. When Naruto awoke, he found himself in his bedroom at the house he shared with Anko and Kurenai, and he saw Kurenai laying beside him with a few dried tears on her face. Naruto thought, I am sorry for causing you pain, Tenchi. As he remembered feeling sick and passing out, and he looked around and wondered how he got here. Kurenai felt guilt for some reason, and she slowly opened her eyes and looked at Naruto and saw the sorrow and worry, and she quickly put her arms around him and kissed him, shocking the poor boy. A few moments later she broke the kiss and said, I thought you were going to die when I heard you were poisoned. If Anko had not been there, you would have. Naruto looked confused and asked, so was that why I felt sick all of a sudden? Kurenai said, yes, from the way the medics talked, I think the fox saved you though, because they said you should be dead from that particular snake bite. That's the only thing I can think of. Naruto asked, how long have I been out? Kurenai said, 2 days, you would have been around yesterday, but someone decided to attack you in the hospital room. After that I had the third let me bring you home after he had me sign some papers for your protection, of course, officially. He said you can meet Jiraiya at the hot springs when you recover. Naruto nods and said, did you stop the attack at the hospital? Kurenai looked down and said, actually Kiba did. He came by to check on Hinata and to see you saying something about a promise to Akamaru. What was that about? Naruto smiled and said, when I grabbed him during the match, I promised Akamaru if he would play along I would give him that food he was eating and also face Kiba in a match of his choosing if I won. That way he would not always be mad at me. Kurenai nodded, looking away, and was silent a moment, and Naruto felt worry and put his hand on her face and turned her to look at him, and he saw tears, and she said, though I had lost you and I still don't know what it is I feel for you yet, but I know one thing. When the medic said you would die, I just wanted to die myself. I can't believe I have fallen for you so fast to feel this pain. I mean, we have only started seeing each other a little over 2 weeks ago. Naruto said, I know. When I read your letter, I wanted to prove to you I was good enough for you. That's why I wore the cloths you had gotten me earlier than I said I would. Kurenai looked confused and said, what letter? Naruto blinked and said, the one Anko gave me right before the test. She said was from you. Kurenai said, do you have the letter? Naruto said, it should be in my coat pocket. Kurenai got out of bed in a pair of short and a loose shirt for comfort and got the letter and growled and said, that little bitch. I told her I wanted you to show everyone, especially after Kakashi called you a one-trick pony, but I did not want to force you to. She wrote this. Anko, who was outside the door sipping a bottle of sake listening in, said, that's right, Kur-chan. I did it so the Gaki would be respectable for you. Aren't you glad I did? I mean he totally humiliated the dog boy and then saved that Lee kid. Not to mention cheering on his little cousin and his stalker. I think if he had not been outfoxed then the Lee kid would be dead and his little stalker would have gave up and received double what she got once she got home. Then the little mutt would never learn and his little cousin would have lost to her rival. That and the fact he would have probably played the idiot and lost his match, so I think this worked out better. Kurenai shot her friend a glare and finally sighed and said, "Fine, you're right, I wanted to say the same damn thing but I did not want to pressure him." Naruto heard this and smiled a real smile and said, "Well, if it's any comfort. I am glad she did because I decided I want to be someone you can be proud of when we let others know about us, that is if you still want us I mean." Kurenai shot him a dumb look and said, "Of course I do, I swear you really are dense sometimes." Naruto said, "Well, I better get ready and start training." As he got out of bed finding he. Anko said, "Hold it Gaki, I want you to find out from the pervert what your schedule is. I have a few things I want to teach you also and maybe little Kur-chan here can teach you a thing or two about genjutsu," as she looked at Kurenai. Kurenai looked in thought and said, "I suppose I can. I mean Shino the only one on my team who passed and he is mostly training with his family. I got only 2 hours a day with him and Kiba now until Hinata gets out." Naruto said, "Well, if you don't mind, why don't I use Kajbunshin to speed up my training with all three of you? I mean I can learn genjutsu and whatever you want me to learn while I learn from this Jiraiya guy." Both ladies looked at each other and Anko said, "Alright, I just got 5 jutsu I want to teach you so create one and come on," as she turned and left the room. Kurenai said, "I suppose that will work but I also have a few other things planned to do during this time also plus I have to help Shino get ready for the exams so I can't teach you much. I do want to spend some time alone with you also. I think it's time we had a special dinner just you and me. How does that sound?" Naruto said, "That sounds good but my cooking's not that great so I hope you like it." Kurenai blushed and said, "Well actually, I thought I would cook for you, tonight." Naruto said, "You don't have to. I mean you have already done so much for me I don't want to be a bother." Kurenai giggled and put her arms around him and said, "You're no trouble Narukun. I mean you're not bother at all." Naruto smiled and Kurenai said, "Well I have heard things about this Jiraiya guy. He's the one who trained your father." Naruto said, "I know. I don't know how to feel about that, if I should be happy or mad because he's doing for my dad or something like that. I will decide when I meet him." Kurenai said, "Well I understand that but the thing that worries me is he happens to be the author of those books Kakashi reads." Naruto growled and said, "He's a pervert," as he looked at her. Kurenai nods and said, "What I wanted to say was just don't become a pervert or else," as she released some ki. Naruto gulped and nods as he quickly grabs his stuff and ran to the bathroom. Once he was gone both Kurenai and Anko burst out laughing and Anko said, "So, already wiping him into shape huh?" Kurenai reached into her pocket and pulled out a book and said, "Yeah, I read this book about relationships and it says that when one is older than the other the younger one sometimes feels defiant and wants to show their better. The best way is to break those habits before the relationship moves too far." Anko snorts and said, "So you think you can mold him into the perfect man?" Kurenai said, "Nope, just reading it to see what not to do. I mean the person who wrote this book has been with over 1,000 women it says." Anko said, "Oh yeah, who wrote it?" Kurenai smiled and said, "Jiraiya." Anko snickered and burst out laughing and said, "Oh god, you're evil." Kurenai said, "I know, now that Naruto knows he's a pervert he won't listen to any relationship advice and will have to learn on his own just as I am also doing so we are both learning together." Anko shook her head and said, "I don't know, I think if you two ever had a kid then that person would be a total hellbound prankster with your and his cunning at manipulation." Kurenai said, "Kids huh, maybe someday," as she blushed and looked away. Anko said, "So what are your other plans you mentioned? I know you don't like planning anything out. Kurenai said. Well, after Naruto got dressed, he quickly went to the hot springs and found Jiraiya by following the shouts of pervert and woman beating him. As Naruto watched the woman leave, Jiraiya melted into mud and he dropped a genjutsu that he was hitting under and said, "So Gaki, you the one sensei told me about?" Naruto said, "Perhaps, are you Jiraiya?" Jiraiya said, "Yes I am." Naruto threw a kunai at Jiraiya who caught it and Naruto appeared in a yellow flash punching Jiraiya in the nuts with his fist and Jiraiya fell to the ground and asked, "Why?" in a pain-filled voice. Naruto said, "I remember you. The guy who was talking about some snake lady using some long tongue jutsu. I remember you also groping me when I used my sexy no jutsu back then." Jiraiya thought a moment and said, "Nope, doesn't ring any bells." Naruto said, "Maybe this will." As he grabbed the notepad that Jiraiya had dropped and put it in the back of his pants and wiped his with it before kicking the still on his knee Jiraiya in the face and pulling the toad oil headband out to stuff the notepad in behind it. Jiraiya quickly got up and grabbed Naruto by the ankle and threw him onto the water, but Naruto stood on top of it as he landed instead of sinking. Jiraiya growled and said, "I remember you now, you're the who ruined one of my works and caused that book to be my worst ever." Naruto said, "Good, then I think we agree, you don't like me and I don't like you. So what do you want to do? Tell the old man to find me someone else or what, Ero-sanin?" Jiraiya smiled evilly and said, "No kid, you're going to learn from me. The first thing you are going to learn is taijutsu." As he appeared behind Naruto and punched him only for Naruto to go up in smoke. Jiraiya looked around when a voice from behind said, "Konoha's secret taijutsu, 1000 years of death," as Jiraiya was sent flying into the air only to dissolve into water. Naruto, who appeared from his cloak of invisibility, was suddenly kicked in the back and flew into the water in front of him face first, making him jump out holding his face that was now red. Naruto pulled out a kunai and threw it at Jiraiya, who grabbed it and threw it all at one time straight up, and Naruto said, "Shit," as he disappeared in a yellow flash and appeared around 200 feet in the air only for a water dragon to hit him as he started to fall. When Naruto finally made it to shore after landing in the water half drowned, he was completely covered in red from light burns and asked, "How did you know?" Jiraiya said, "I knew your old man when he was creating that jutsu, so I know how to counter it. A throwed one is one you're automatically committed to. Once you threw it, I knew you only had 20 seconds at most before you had to instantly jump with it, so when I caught it I simply threw it as high as I could straight up. Anyone who never faced your father would have been caught by yours use, but a seasoned vet like me can use it against you. You surprised me on the first time considering you used a standard kunai instead of the tri-prong kunais your dad did, but after I figured that out you're easy to beat. Also I could detect when you used the Kujubunshin and replaced yourself with it. I must say that was impressive improvisation, but you still lack experience and support skills." Naruto nods and said, "So are you going to teach me or not, because I got someone else who wants to teach me also." Jiraiya said, "Really? Who?" as he looked at Naruto. Naruto said, "Anko." Jiraiya nods and said, "She probably wants to know the Schedule 1 plan to train you also, right?" Naruto just nods and Jiraiya said, "Alright, I will train you from noon until I don't feel like it any longer. You will meet me here every day and we will go from there. Now tell me what ninjutsu you know." Naruto said, "Well, I know Kujubunshin and the secret behind it, henge, replacement, sexy no jutsu, harem jutsu, cloak of invisibility, Hiraishin, tree climbing, water walking, leaf balancing, and my ninjutsu summoning." Jiraiya said, "I heard about that. Quite impressive and unique way to do it. Anything else?" Naruto said, "No, Kakashi-sensei won't teach me anything besides the tree climbing." Jiraiya said, "Then who showed you the secret of Kujubunshin and the other exercises?" Naruto said, "Iruka-sensei showed me the leaf balancing and then Anko showed me water walking as well as the secret of Kujubunshin's. She had me learn the katas of a taijutsu using it in less than a week." Jiraiya was quite a moment and Naruto said, "Can you teach me the 5-star sealer and unsealer?" Jiraiya said, "I can, but you won't be able to use it on yourself. It takes a lot of chakra control, and if you have it put on you, then you won't be able to use it." Naruto said, "Well, I was actually wanting to learn it to use against Gaara." Jiraiya said, "So you know about him, huh? The old man must be getting senile to tell a genin about that." Naruto said, "Actually, it wasn't him who told me, he only confirmed it." Jiraiya looked at Naruto and asked, "Then who told you?" Naruto pointed to his stomach and Jiraiya said, "So you can talk to it?" Naruto said, "No, but when we were in wave I accidentally drew on its power and heard it whispering to kill the guy the first was fighting, but I didn't, and then during the match Gaara had with Lee I had heard its voice again calling Gaara, Shukaku." Jiraiya looked in thought and said, "Well, then we need to start your training. Let's start with summoning." And so began Naruto day of training. About 3 weeks had went by when Naruto came to Kurenai door in his sexy no jutsu, except he had cloths on and looked like a younger version of his mother from the picture he had of her and her dad when she was pregnant, and he looked down at his hand that was shaking uncontrollably and he tried to unlock the door but he couldn't. Naruto thought, "Damn it, what is wrong with my hands? Why is it I can't use them anymore or make hand signs? I was lucky I can use my sexy no jutsu without hand signs now, or I would have been way in trouble. Maybe Tenchi is home and can let me in." As he hit the door with his knee a couple of times. Inside the house, Kurenai looked at the clock and said, "I wonder who that is," as she set her tea down and got up and walked to the door. When she got there and opened the door, Naruto said, "Thank Kami you're here, Tenchi. Ero Sanin's training was killer today and I can't use my hands." As the red-haired girl in front of Kurenai held out her hands that were trembling, and Kurenai quickly went wide-eyed as she recognized the nicknames and looked behind her and whispered as she leaned forward, "Wait, Naruto, is that you?" Naruto nods and Kurenai said, "Shit, you got to stay in that form until later, we got company." Naruto said, "Oh, okay Tenchi, but can I come in? I am tired and can't really do anything at the moment." Looking at his hands, Kurenai said, "Yeah, come on in." As she stepped aside and Naruto walked in. As Naruto walked into the room, he was surprised to see Hinata, Ino, Tenten and Sakura here, and from this point until I say otherwise I will be calling Naruto in female terms since he is in female form right now. Ino said, "Hello, who are you?" Kurenai came in and said, "Oh, this is." Naruto said, "My name is Kushina, I am one of Kurenai roommates." Kurenai smiled and nods, and Sakura asked, "If your roommates, why did you not just let yourself in?" Kushina, as Naruto was going by now, said, "Because I can't use my hands at the moment. I overtrained today, as you can see." Holding her hands up that were trembling. All the girls looked at her and Tenten asked, "Are you a ninja?" Kushina said, "Yes, a genin, why?" Sakura said, "Well, we just was wondering since you said you were training, and how old are you? I mean, you don't look any older than us." Kushina said, 14 going to be 15 soon. Why does it matter if I am or not, and don't you ladies know it's impolite not to tell others your names? Each of the girls looked sheepish and said their names, and Kurenai asked, "Do you need anything, Kushina?" Kushina looked embarrassed and said, Well, if you don't mind helping me in my room a second with something, I would appreciate the help." Kurenai said, "Sure, girls, I will be back in a moment," as both walked out of the room. When they made it to Naruto room, Kurenai asked, "What do you need?" Kushina said, "I need your help changing so I can go to the restroom. I can't undo any of my buttons on my cloths. I hate to ask, but I really need to go." As she looked down, Kurenai blushed and said, "Sure. Just give me a second." As she ran to her room and came back with a white bathrobe and quickly helped Kushina take off her shirt that changed back to its real look the moment it touched the ground, along with her pants, and looking away she helped with the boxers but caught enough of a look and thought, "Holy hell, it really does turn him into a woman. I thought that was a joke." She then slipped him on some of his shorts, and after a few seconds they changed into a different pair of shorts, and Kushina said, "Thanks, now what are they doing here?" Kurenai said, "Well, now that Hinata out of the hospital, I wanted to talk to all the girls from Konoha who failed in the second exam about theater training and stuff." Kushina said, "I see, well, I guess I need to go and I will just come back in here afterwards. Could you come back and tell me when they are gone so I can drop the jutsu?" Kurenai said, "Sure, I will hurry up and get rid of them." Kushina said, "No, you wanted to help them and they need help, so talk to them. I can keep this up for days even in my sleep, so don't worry about it," as she left to go to the restroom. Luckily, with only the shorts and the house robe on, she had no other trouble using the restroom. When she came out, Ino was standing at the door and said, "The others want you to come join us." Kushina said, "Well, I don't mean to intrude." Ino grabbed her arm and started to drag Kushina toward the living room and said, "Well, since Kurenai-sensei is talking about training and stuff for us women, you might as well come also, so either you can learn something or add your own advice," as she let go of her arm and walked toward a seat. Kushina sighed and saw the sorry look on Kurenai's face and said, "Oh, get that look off your face, Tenchi, it don't look good on you," making everyone look at both Kushina and Kurenai, who had a blush on. Ino asked, "Tenchi, why did you call her that?" Kushina froze a moment, realizing her slip, and said, "Oh, it's just the nickname her boyfriend gave her. I like to tease her with it." And for just a moment all eyes locked on her, and Kurenai shot her a look that clearly said, "You just opened the gates of hell." Hinata stuttered, "You have a boyfriend, sensei?" as each of the girls looked at the older girl. Kurenai took a sip of tea, trying to think of what to say, and said, "Yes." Ino said, "Ooh, gossip. The famed ice queen of Konoha has finally melted. So tell me, who is he?" Kurenai smiled and said, "Not telling." Sakura, who was just as much as a gossip hound, said, "You have to. The bonds of sisterhood demand it. So tell us who he is, how did you meet, how long you been going out, have you done it, how good is he, what's he like, how you got the nickname Tenchi, and anything else about him." As the list was going on, Kurenai was getting redder and redder, and Kushina felt Kurenai getting uneasy and said, "Hold it, girls, if you want to know all that, then you have to earn her trust to keep it a secret. Her and her boyfriend want to keep their relationship a secret for a reason. I only know because I am her roommate, but I can tell you a story about how Kurenai got her nickname and how they met if you want to listen to it, but it's a long story and all true, and you have to listen to it all, and in the end you will tell me what you think about the main people in the story, and if you pass my test, Kurenai might tell you about her relationship if she wants to, that is." Agreed. Kurenai looked at Kushina and said, "You're not telling them all of it, are you?" Kushina said, "Relax, I am going to change the names and locations, so even if they were to go to the same village they would never know it, so that way those two won't have to worry about it." Tenten asked, "So how does this story go? I mean, how do you know it?" Kushina said, "I am originally from the village this story takes place." Ino said, "So you're not originally from Konoha?" Kushina said, "My father was, my mother sort of not, and I won't explain it, so don't ask. Anyways, when those of us who know this story tell it, we call it the Tenchi and the Oni." Hinata stuttered, "The angel and the demon. Why?" Kurenai said, "Before she tells this story, do any of you know anything about sealing?" Tenten said, "I do." The others shook their head no, and Kurenai asked, "Okay, well, answer this question of common sense. If you seal a kunai in a scroll, does it turn the scroll into the kunai?" Tenten said, "Of course not. They are two separate things." Kurenai looked at the other girls and they all nodded, and she asked, "Okay, one more example before the story gets told. If a prisoner is locked in a prison, does that make the prison the prisoner?" Sakura said, "Of course not, that's stupid, who would believe such a thing?" Kushina said in a sad tone, "A lot of people actually." Everyone looked at her and Ino asked, "What do you mean?" Kushina said, Now I am going to change the names of places and people, so I want you all to name me the names of your teammates and places real quick so I can choose from them. Sakura asked, why are teammates' names? Kushina said, so that way my own choosing of names won't accidentally screw it up, and since I don't think any of you have ever been to the village in this story, you won't name it either. After each of the girls named their teammates and places, Kushina said, now remember, I am changing the names of people and places to protect the innocent. This story starts a long time ago. Before I was born, actually. This man named Sasuke, who was the leader of the village of Wave, was happily married to a woman from another village named Hinata. At this, two blast of Ki from Sakura and Ino hit him. Ino said, how come I was not chosen as Sasuke's wife? Sakura said, no me. Kushina blasted both with Ki, freezing them, and said, because of that reason right there. Answer me this question, girls. Do you want to know why Sasuke never has accepted any dates from any of you girls? Everyone was looking at him, and Sakura said, because he is waiting until he kills a certain man. Kushina slapped her own head and said, I swear by all that is created, fangirls are God's judgment on people. Getting looks from everyone, and after calming down, Kushina said, alright girls, here is a little information you all are too blind to notice. Sasuke is the last of his clan, correct? Everyone nods, and Kushina said, do you know that Sasuke, because of the laws of Konoha, has to marry several women? Sakura asked, what do you mean? Kushina said, simple. When a clan or someone with a bloodline is nearly out of people who carry their name or bloodline, then they have to have a harem because of the clan resurrection laws. Sasuke knows this, and you know why he has never told you all about it. The reason why you Sakura and you Ino had to throw your friendship away when you were younger, making both girls look sheepish in a way. Kushina said, it's because Sasuke likes to see people hurt other people. Sakura said, that's not true. Kushina blasted her with Ki, making her and Ino shut up, and said, really? Then answer me this, with over 300 women chasing after him to be with him, all willing to do anything to make him happy, and would even be willing to share him, then why would he just sit there and watch as you fight each other every day and never put an end to it by saying he can have multiple wives and lovers to save you all emotional and physical pain? If he actually gave a damn about any of you, then he would have stood up and saved you, but no, he just sits back, smirks, and waits for you to act like little playthings where he can just say, Sakura, kill Ino, and for his love you would actually do it, and you Ino would do the same thing. Never mind, you both were once like sister, who needs sister when their pecker to be had, huh? You know what? I bet if you asked Sasuke what his favorite mission was, you know what he would say. Capture Tora. Why, you ask? Simple, it's the only piece of he meets that he actually has to chase it. Kurenai, who saw both girls get embraced and mad, and said, that's enough, Kushina. I know how you feel about this because of how things were for your relative, but I don't think these girls would listen to your views, even if they were right. Kushina sighed and closed her eyes and said, forgive me girls, it's just my cousin is a fangirl, and I have seen the guy she loves actually punch her in the face before and walked away never looking back, and she has actually crawled on her hands and knees for this guy, and he still treats her as trash. When I see the same thing happening because of Sasuke, it just makes my blood boil. Everyone was quite a few moments, and Kushina said, well anyways, as I said before, this guy named Sasuke who married this girl named Hinata were happily married and were expecting a child. They had hid their relationship from all but their closest friends because Sasuke had a lot of enemies and he was afraid they would hurt Hinata to get to him. Anyways, the day their son Naruto. Sakura snickered and said, Naruto, why are you making him the son? Kushina said, oh, I figure it's because back before Sasuke family was killed, Sasuke and Naruto were best friends. Both Ino and Sakura looked at each other, and Ino asked, are you sure? Kushina said, yes, he even had dinner with Sasuke and his older brother Itachi. In fact, one of the 3 reasons why Naruto and Sasuke don't care for each other now is because of Itachi. Kurenai said, really? I didn't know that. Kushina said, yeah, Naruto could not believe that Itachi would just kill his whole clan for no reason but to test his power and said that he must have done it for another reason and must have had help. I mean, how could one man actually kill over 200 people and most of them trained ninja with more experience than him in less than a few hours without alerting the village Anbu of it? Naruto thinks someone else did it and Itachi told Sasuke he did it so Sasuke would not be stupid and go after the real killers of their clan while Itachi tried to track them down, or maybe the Uchiha had done something truly evil and the third had them all killed and Itachi took the blame under orders to protect Sasuke. I mean, the Uchiha had a lot of skeletons in their closet they tried to hide and they also had a lot of enemies who could use a henge to fool Sasuke. I mean, he did not have his Sharingan then and was just barely an academy student. Why could not a Junin henge to look like Itachi and frame him? Hell, at one time people actually thought it was the Hyuga who killed them and then Itachi took the blame so they would spare Sasuke. Anyways, back to what I was saying. Sasuke believes Itachi just killed them on a whim and never tried to look underneath to see the real reason, and Naruto believes that maybe Itachi had a reason or he might be innocent. Everyone looked at Kushina and she said, well, anyways, let's get back to the story. Now, as I was saying, Sasuke and Hinata had a little boy named Naruto and they should have had a happy life together, but the day Naruto was born a terrible demon attacked the village of Wave and were killing all of their people. Ino said, sounds like the Kyuubi attack on Konoha. Kushina said, you do know there are lots of demons in the world and a lot of villages have been attacked by them in the past, so don't assume things until you have all the information. Ino looked sheepish and Kushina said, anyways, Sasuke, being the leader of the village, felt it was his duty to save the villagers, so he found an ancient jutsu, and since he was a sealmaster he discovered a way to stop the demon and eventually kill it, but it would cost him his life. He was unhappy about this but knew it had to be done to save his son. He was also sad because his wife Hinata died during labor, so he knew that his choice was going to make his son an orphan. Anyways, Sasuke told the person he chose to take over after him as the leader of the village the truth about what he was going to do and also about his son whose life was about to be cursed by saving the village. You see, to kill the demon using the jutsu he found, he would have to summon the Shinigami who would aid in the sealing and then seal it into a newborn baby, making each of the girls gasp. Ino said, he didn't. Kushina looked down and said, yes, he did. Tenten said, so he sealed the demon inside his own son. Kushina said, yes, he was such a noble person that he could not ask any other family to sacrifice their child to become the living prison of the demon, so he chose his own son, and using the jutsu and sealing he sealed the demon in the baby so that as Naruto grew up he would slowly take the power of the demon away and kill the demon so it would never escape again, and when Naruto died the demon would also die. He had asked the man who took over for him to have the people see the boy as the hero he was. Sakura had gone quiet during this and Ino asked, so he grew up as the hero, everyone worshipped him, right? Kushina and Kurenai snorted and Kushina said, no, in fact when the new leader, Kiba, told the truth about the baby beside the fact they tried to kill Naruto several times. Kiba's heart was broken over this and knew that Sasuke would kill the people who openly cried out for the baby to be put to death, never mind the fact he saved their village from destruction. Anyways, Kiba wanted little Naruto to have a normal life as best as he could. He put him in the orphanage and passed a law that said if anyone told the younger generation about the truth or the law they would either be arrested or executed. This did not stop the hate either. As the boy grew up he was abused in every way you can imagine. The parents of the children who came later also found a way to get around the law. They had their children ignore or abuse Naruto as he grew up and simply had them stay away from him, and they picked up their parents' hate of him. Sakura asked, didn't anyone ever adopt him? What about Kiba? Why didn't he adopt him? As she was getting sad and about to cry. Kushina said, Kiba wanted to and tried to do it in fact, but the council of the village told Kiba if he did they would remove him from office and then select a new leader of the village who would have Naruto executed, so he was forbidden from adopting him. Kiba, Since he knew who Naruto parents were and about their marriage, also knew that Hinata had a brother named Shino who had married a woman named Tenten and they had a daughter named Sakura. Ino said, so did they adopt him? I mean they were family, right? Kurenai said, well, Shino had died during the demon's attack to help by Sasuke the time to seal the demon into Naruto. Kushina said, when Naruto was 4 and Sakura was 3, Kiba had called Tenten to her office and told her about Naruto parents. Tenten said she already knew who he was and she saw him as nothing but the demon itself and refused to adopt Naruto, who was in the other room at the time and heard her say it. Naruto had just been taken out of the orphanage at the time when his 500th assassination attempt happened, making everyone gasp. Hinata asked, how did he live through that many attempts? Kurenai said, well, thanks to the seal, Naruto was able to heal real quick because, as we told you, the seal was designed for Naruto to draw the chakra away from the demon and slowly kill it by making the chakra Naruto, and his body became used to having it and it healed all his wounds from the attacks. And also there were a few people who saw him as a hero but not many, so he would sometimes be saved and Kiba would try to keep a guard on Naruto at all times, even though that only stopped some of them. Sakura thought, this sounds so much like my teammate Naruto. People are always giving him hateful looks and he does heal quick. He also had that strange red chakra that covered him in the forest of death when Orochimaru attacked us. Could that be the chakra of a demon, and if it is, does that mean he's the person they are talking about, or is it just a coincidence? Kushina said, anyways, after that Kiba had no choice but to give Naruto his own place and he grew up alone and did not even know why he was hated. Ino asked, did he ever find happiness? What happened to him? Did they finally kill him? Did he ever find out why he was hated? As she was really wanting to know. Kushina asked, before we continue, do you all think Naruto was a demon or just a hero his father asked him to be? I mean, honestly, what do you all think? Tenten said, like I said, a kunai is not the scroll, it is sealed it. Each of the girls nodded and Kurenai smiled and said, I think they should know it all, don't you, Kushina? Kushina got a playful look in her eyes and said in an uncertain kind of voice, perhaps, but I don't know. I mean, the rest of the story is a roller coaster of events. I mean, I don't want Naruto to hate us if he ever met the girls here someday, especially with what happens in the story. I mean, should I tell the girls here if he could trust those that were younger than him? How they thought of him after finding out the creature that killed some of their parents and family was sealed in someone they went to school with, worked with, or if Sakura and Naruto had a form of friendship, or does Naruto ever tell Sakura he was her cousin or that she had a bloodline? I just wonder if we should just stop because this was not our story to tell, and your nickname Tenchi came from this story because you and your boyfriend have a unique relationship similar to that of Naruto and another person. Sakura said, no, we wouldn't see him any different. I mean it. As she looked at Kushina. Ino said, yeah, I mean, come on. We're smart enough to tell the difference. Wanting to know the rest of the story. Tenten said, I know the difference because I know sealing. Tell us what happens, please. Hinata said in a stuttery voice. Sensei, please tell us. Kushina said, I will tell you the rest of the story, but not today. Making each of the girls faceplant. Ino said, why damn it? Kushina said, simple Ino, Tenchi here asked you all over to talk to you about your training, and I am tired from my own training, and you all need to think over what you heard already so you can ask better questions next time so I can tell you more about Naruto, Sakura, and the other people in this story. Well, I am going to lay down. As she got up and left the room. Once she was gone, all the girls looked at Kurenai and she said, well, sorry girls. You have to wait, but think over what you really think about Naruto. I mean, you all say now you don't think he is a demon, but make sure, because if you ever meet him in real life it could mean a good friend or a powerful enemy for you. Well, it's late, so why don't we call it a night? Each of them groaned and looked at the clock and saw it was 7 p.m. and got up and left except Hinata. Hinata said after they left in a stuttery voice, Sensei, can I talk to you in the kitchen? Kurenai nods and walks into the kitchen. When they got in the kitchen, Kurenai turned around and received a slap across the face and heard, "You bitch, you took him from me," as Kurenai held her face. Kushina ran into the room when she heard the slap and the shout, and Kushina asked, "What's going on?" Kurenai said, "I don't know. Hinata, why did you attack me?" Hinata, who was red, said, "I know about the Kyuubi in Naruto-kun, I can figure out what you both are saying. You stole Naruto-kun from me." As she looked at Kushina with her bloodline active and said, "I know it's you, Naruto-kun," in an angry voice with no stutter. Kurenai said, "What the hell are you talking about, Hinata?" Hinata said, "I have known the truth about Naruto since we were younger, that's why I looked up to him in the academy. He would ignore all the hateful looks he received and kept on trying. Even when people threw rocks at him, or beat him, or refused to let him into their stores. Kurenai sensei, you took him from me, you bitch, you knew I liked him and all, and you betrayed me." Kushina said, "Enough." Making both freeze as she unleashed ki. As both were panting, Kushina sighed, putting her hands in a seal several times before she was able to release the jutsu as she was covered in smoke and changed to him, and he said, "Hinata, Kurenai did not take me from you. You keep going on and on about how you want me to be with you, and even when you were told that I just wanted friends with you, you ignored my wishes and only looked after what you thought. I tried to tell you that I did not like you that way because I honestly don't know how to be anything other than a friend. I grew up hated and abused, and most of the times when people were nice to me, it was just so they could try and poison me or lure me into traps. I respect you as a friend, but my heart never held more than that for you." Hinata said, "No, you're wrong, Naruto-kun, you have feeling for me, but this homewrecker made you forget them." Kurenai said, "Enough, Hinata. You." She was stopped when Naruto put his hand on her shoulder. Naruto sighed and said, "Hinata, you want to know why I never had feeling other than a friend for you? I will tell you. Since I knew you were untouchable, I never let myself fall for you back when we were younger. That is why I never wanted anything other than friends, because I have already been hurt enough in my life. Why hurt myself more when you're already engaged to be married to someone else?" Making Kurenai look at him. Hinata said, "But I don't love him." Naruto said, "I know, Hinata, I was his best friend and I know how big of a jackass he is now, but no matter what you or I say or do, there is nothing either of us can do about it, so why put ourselves through years of pain and hardship? We can be friends, and if you ever need a shoulder to cry on, I am there for you, but we can never be more than that. That was why I never let there be an us, Hinata. It's why I found someone who has taken the time to show me happiness. Can't you let this crush go and accept my friendship, or are you going to ruin the chance we have for it?" Kurenai asked, "Wait, do you mean she's engaged to Sasuke?" Naruto said, "Yes, she is. They both have been engaged since before they were born, thanks to an agreement between both clans to hopefully end the rivalry between them. I knew about it because I heard Itachi and Sasuke talking about it once." Hinata said, "But Naruto, I can be the woman for you, I would do anything for you. I can change for you," as she was pleading with emotion in her voice. Naruto closed his eyes and sighed and said, "Hinata, I don't want someone who will change to make me happy. I want someone who can be themselves around me and feel relax. Kurenai and I have just recently started to see each other, and we don't know what it is we feel for each other, but we do know we like what we feel and want to experience it more. Please don't make me hurt one of the only friends I have, or the woman I have come to care for. Please accept my friendship for you and leave it at that. Please." Hinata was crying and she looked away from Naruto and Kurenai, and after several minutes of crying she said, "All right. I will just be your friend, but if you ever hurt him, sensei, I will kill you. Even if I have to come back to do it after I am gone. I want you both to make each other happy." As she walked out of the kitchen, never looking back, and slammed the door behind her. Naruto looked at Kurenai and asked, "Are you alright?" Kurenai nods and said, "Yes, are you okay? I mean, I know that must have been tough on you. I was surprised you actually told them as much as you did. Any reason you did?" Naruto said, I am tired of hiding from people, and if the ones who don't know can't accept me for me, then they never will. That's why I changed some of the names. As he looked tired. Kurenai thought as she looked at him. That look does not suit him. As she walked over and grabbed his hand and said, I want you to go get you some shorts you don't mind getting wet and change back into your female form and come to the bathroom. Naruto looked confused and Kurenai said, just do it, Kushina. As she smirked. Naruto nods and walked to his room and got some cloths before putting his female form of Kushina back on and walked to the bathroom and saw Kurenai sitting in a bubble bath with a bathing suit on and she said, come get in the water. You need to relax and I will give you a massage while I wash your back. Naruto asked, and why do you want me to be in my female form? Kurenai said, because I don't want you to be embraced taking a bath with me if you get aroused, so if you're a female you can't get aroused that way and won't be embraced. Besides, I don't want any accidents. Naruto sighs and walks over to the tub and takes the bathrobe off and Kurenai said, you know, I have to say you do have nice B cup looks like. Naruto turned red and said, oh god, you just had to say that, didn't you? As he stepped in the water in front of Kurenai and sat down with his back to her. Kurenai started to wash his back and Naruto looked at the tub and asked, how come there's seals on the tub? Kurenai said, I am surprised you never noticed them before. Naruto said, I guess it's just because I always take quick showers. What are they for? Kurenai said, a friend of Anko's put them on the tub. They keep the water the same temperature all the time so you don't have to worry about it getting cold if you need to soak because of sore muscles. Now relax, you're too tense. As she rubbed his spine. Naruto sighed as he closed his eyes and said, you're pretty good at this, you give massages a lot. Kurenai said, no, I had to learn how to do them in Cortesian classes. Naruto said, really? Maybe I should take them so I can return the favor sometime. As he rocked a little under the feeling of her fingers across his back. A little earlier across town on the road to her house Sakura was in deep thought when a kind voice said, how are you this evening Sakura? Making her look and notice the Hokage there. Sakura said, alright Hokage-sama, how are you? The third said, oh I am fine. I was just going and meeting some of the genins I saw at the exam and talking to them about it. Would you mind walking with an old man back to his office so we can talk about your interpretation of it? Sakura said, sure Hokage-sama. As they walked. A few minutes of silence and the third said, so what's troubling you dear? You seem to be in deep thought. Sakura said, oh nothing sir, just thinking of a story I heard. Nothing important. The third nods as they walk into his office and said, let me guess, the Tenchi and the Oni. As he walked over to his desk and sat down at it. Sakura was wide-eyed and said, yes, how did you know sir? The third said, Sakura, would you like to know more of that story than what you have heard? Sakura got excited and said, yes sir, I would. The third smiled and reached under his desk and pulled out his crystal ball and set it on his desk before he said, Sakura, this is the Hokage all-seeing crystal ball. Most people never get to see it and those who do are sworn never to tell of it to anyone because of what it can do. Do you understand that by showing this to you I am putting a lot of faith in you? Sakura could only nod and the third said, good, now pull up a chair and watch. Don't question anything as I am sure you are about to learn some things. As the ball glowed Sakura quickly grabbed a chair and scooted it over. She watched as the ball took the shape of Kurenai running some bath water and she blinked and the third said, just watch, I know this is invading her privacy but if you want to know the rest of the story you need to understand it also so please don't think ill of me yet. As they watched her slip in the tub in a bathing suit. Sakura then watched as Kushina walked in the bathroom and then she said, wait, that was Naruto. The third said, shush and watch. This is important. As he looked back at the ball and the two watched the scene play out. Sakura thought as they started to take a bath, Naruto is her boyfriend. As she clenched her fist and watched things. Back in the bathroom, Naruto asked, "So how do you think Sakura will react when she finds out the truth?" Kurenai said, "I don't know, your cousin could either turn out just like her mother or showed she's better. I wish I could tell you, but I don't know her good enough to guess." Naruto nods and Kurenai said, "So do you plan to tell her about her bloodline?" Naruto sighed and said, "Maybe. I mean, if I do, I will have to tell her how I know about it, and if I do, then she could be like her mom. That's why I stopped the story. I know they all said they would accept me, but if they find out that I was the baby, then they may turn out like most of the village. I don't want to lose what little respect and friends I do have." Kurenai smiled as she saw his shoulder sag a little with him relaxing and said, "So what exactly is her bloodline? I mean, you never did tell me." Naruto looked at her and asked, "Why?" Kurenai blushed and said, "Well, if things work out between us and we have any children, we will have to tell them about it if any are girls." Naruto blushed also and said, "Well, that's down the road, but I guess I can tell you just in case. Mom's notes said it was called the Vanity doppelganger. I don't know a lot about it, but I do know it only shows up in the females of the Uzumaki family. I don't know what causes it, but to activate the actual bloodline part of it, the girls have to go against their inner self." Kurenai asked, "Inner self? What do you mean?" Naruto said, "Remember how Sakura kicked Ino out of her head when I called to her? The reason is her inner self hates me, probably from the hate her mom has for me, but anyways, when I called to Sakura, her inner self took control and kicked Ino out. I knew she would have lost otherwise, and I wanted to give her help when I could. That's why I cheered her. It's like a split personality inside of her." Kurenai said, "So that's why she sometimes seems like two different people." Naruto nods and said, "Yeah, the men in the Uzumaki family don't get it, but we can see when it takes over. It looks scary as hell. Even Kyuubi's not as scary as inner Sakura, and trust me, I have seen both." Back inside the tower, Sakura hears her inner self say, "I will show that little blonde bastard who's scary. You think that fox is a demon? Wait till I get my hands on you, you little blonde bastard." Kurenai asked, "So what exactly does the inner do?" Naruto said, "Other than annoy the girl, nothing, but if the girl gets rid of it, then they get one of several possible advantages. Either they will get physically stronger like Rock Lee strong, or get a chakra boost like me versus Lee in chakra only, or get a speed boost where they will go from civilian speed to Junin speed overnight, and whichever they get will cause their body to change. There are other possibilities since my mom's notes were only in her diary she left me." Kurenai looked interested and asked, "What do you mean by body changes?" Naruto blushed and said, "According to my mother, you can tell how much chakra a woman has by how big her are. The bigger the more chakra they have. If an Uzumaki female gets rid of her inner self and they get the massive chakra boost, then it would be like mom said her grandmother was, who went from an A- cup to a double E cup in chakra. Each girl is different in what they get, how their bodies will change, and how to get rid of their inner self. You never know which will happen until they actually get rid of their inner self." Kurenai nods and said, "So how exactly do they get rid of it?" Naruto said, "Well, they have to go against their inner self and make them want to leave. I mean, they literally have to find things their inner self does not want to do and then do them. Each girl is different, so all I know is what my mom did to get rid of hers. It is actually kind of funny." Kurenai said, "Really? Tell me about it." Naruto said, "Well, my mom, when she first started to get rid of hers, went and egged the Rasenkage Tower. Stole the cloths out of the hot springs in Whirlpool, went skinny dipping in the water tower in the village of Whirlpool. She painted all the red roses in a flower shop blue. The one that actually got her to get rid of it though was when she came across my father when he was an apprentice under Ero Sanin, and she cast a genjutsu on him, making him believe that he was getting in a hot spring when in fact he was standing in the middle of a wedding reception." Kurenai burst out laughing when she heard this and said, "You mean your father actually stripped down at a wedding and thought he was getting in a hot spring?" Naruto smiled and said, "Yeah, That was how he originally got the nickname, the Yellow Flash. He created the Hiraishin in hopes of making people forget the real reason. Kurenai said, "Wait, why didn't he detect the genjutsu?" Naruto scratched the back of his head and said, he sort of couldn't, he edit them just like I do. Apparently it's something genetic about us, I guess. Kurenai saw Naruto look down and said, "You don't, Naruto. Your dad must have eventually gotten better at them since he became Hokage, and I am sure you will also. It will just take time. I think it's funny that you got your mother's personality and your father's looks." Naruto closed his eyes and looked away, and Kurenai saw the sadness in his body and said, "You don't have to hold it back." Naruto sat up and asked, "What?" Kurenai said, "The pain, you don't have to hide it from me. I can see it in your eyes and your body. The hurt and rage and sorrow. The loneliness. You don't have to worry about it anymore. I will be here for you, so let it out." In the Hokage Tower, the third stopped the crystal ball and put it away and said, "That's enough answers. I will respect the rest of their privacy since Naruto actually does not like to show his real emotions to people. Besides myself, Kurenai is probably the only other to actually see this side of him." Sakura looked at the third and after several moments asked, "Is it all true? I mean, the Kyuubi, his dad, my mother, the hate, the lies, all of it?" As she was letting tears fall through confusion. The third sighed and reached into his pocket and said, "I think it's time you received this," as he pulled out a scroll with a spiral seal on it and handed it to Sakura. Sakura looked at it and asked, "What is this?" The third said, "That is your true family crest on a blood seal. To open it you must smear some of your blood on it. You and Naruto are both the last of the Uzumaki bloodline, the founding family of the village of Whirlpool before it was destroyed during the last Great War. That scroll is from your father. Your mother would have destroyed it if she knew it existed because she never would have wanted you to learn the truth. She has too much to lose if you did." Sakura was confused and asked, "What do you mean? What would my mother lose?" The third said, "First she would lose her seat on the council, next she would lose the fortune she is stealing, then she would most likely lose your respect for her. Your mother has some secrets that are even worse than the Kyuubi in Naruto. If you decide to read that scroll, your life will forever be changed. I will give you some time alone to decide what you want to do. If you don't want to read it, here is a lighter so you can destroy it, but I am telling you now, I am forbidding you from telling anyone you know about Naruto and the Kyuubi or his relationship with Kurenai unless it is only those two, and if you try and blackmail them I will have you locked away. I will not have Naruto lose the only happiness he has had in over 14 years. Now if you will excuse me. I need to take care of some things." As he got up and left the room. Once outside he looked at his secretary chair and went up in a puff of smoke, and the third Hokage who was sitting in the secretary chair thought, "Must thank Naruto Ajian for telling me about the Kujbunshin Jutsu. It allowed me to send one to Sakura while I stayed and watched what happened with Naruto and Kurenai, so that way I would know how to tell Sakura about the truth. I hope she makes the right decision." Sakura looked at the scroll in her hand, and after several moments she slowly broke the seal on it and began reading. "Dear child, I wish I can call you a daughter or son, but at this time you are not far enough along to tell the. My name is Chad Uzumaki. I am the older brother of Kushina Uzumaki, the Kyuubi Rasenkage of Whirlpool, or was when it was still around before it was destroyed. I hope you have had a good life, and I am sorry I have not been able to be there for you, but my brother-in-law, Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage of Konoha, is about to go and seal the Kyuubi no Kitsune into his newborn son Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. In doing this it will cost him his life, and since him and Kushina both loved each other, the Uzumaki mate mark is on both, so she will also die the exact moment he does. Now you are probably wondering what this mate mark is. Well, how it came to be I don't know, but whenever someone with the Uzumaki bloodline finds someone and fall in love with them, their first kiss with the person, if they return, the feeling of love will cause both to pass out, and a mark will appear on their neck until the next morning when they wake up. This mark makes it where if one dies, They both die since all Uzumaki are loyal to their friends and family and never want to live without their true love or have them feel the loneliness of the other's death. This mark joins them. Like I said, I don't know how it came to be, but it has been passed down over the years in our blood. Now this mark also makes it where you can feel your love's emotions to help you be happier together. Now if the person you love does not care for you the same way, then the mark will not appear. To tell if an Uzumaki has found their mate, you have to wipe some Uzumaki blood across the neck of the person who you think is a mate to an Uzumaki or that Uzumaki neck, and if our family crest appears on the neck, then they are bonded to an Uzumaki. Now you're probably wondering, if this mark is true, then why is it your mother is still alive? The sad truth is your mother and I never actually loved each other. The reason we were married and had you was because your mother threatened to sell out Kushina and Minato marriage to Aiwa so they could kill her. She blackmailed not only Kushina, who was pregnant with Naruto at the time, but also Minato, and to keep her from telling he had her placed on the council, but she wanted more. She wanted not only political power but also to be pampered and treated like a queen, and since I stated earlier Kushina and myself are both from Whirlpool, we are also members of the founding family, and as such all the villages that were allied with us set up an account to help support the survivors of Whirlpool, with our family being the primary beneficiary. There originally were 100 survivors who came to Konoha, but after assassination and the war only 5 were left. I have already heard the other 3 have already died tonight holding the Kyuubi off, and so when I and Kushina die, the money in the account will be rightfully Naruto's and yours. Now your mother forced me to marry her and conceive a child with her, so while you are a minor she may have access to so much of the account per month to take care of you, around 10,000 a month. However, this is divided in 2 for you and Naruto, so if Naruto were to die, instead of getting half of that money she would get it all, and I fear she is greedy enough to do something to him. I would do anything for my family including you, but I do not consider your mother family because of her own actions. I know this is not what you wanted to find out. Your mother wanted you for only political power and economic reasons. Should you become an adult in the village, you would automatically get her council seat also, and by right Naruto will be getting the Namikaze seat once he is strong enough to fight his father's enemies. I ask the third, since he will be taking over after Minato passes away, to ensure you receive this scroll when you learn not only the truth about Naruto being the jailer of the Kyuubi, but also when you are considered an adult of the village, and if you are a ninja, then that means when you become a genin. I know your mother will probably try and keep you away from it so she can that fortune for longer. I want you to know, whether I care for your mother or not does not matter. I would have loved to see you grow up and care for you, and I know I would have loved you, my child. I want you to know I am proud of you, and please continue our family tradition, be loyal to those you consider family and friends, and don't let fear of the unknown stop you. Face it head on. Love, your father, Chad Uzumaki. Sakura looked at the letter, reading it over again as she let tears fall as the letter fell from her hands and cried for herself. After about 15 minutes, the third walked back in the office and said, "So, what do you think about all you have seen and heard today?" Sakura was quite a moment and said, "Sir, I don't know what to think. I just found out the only reason I am alive is so my mother could get at some stupid money and power. My whole life was a lie, and I find out my only living relative on my father's side has a demon inside of him. What should I think?" The third said, "I understand. Naruto went through the same thing not too long ago. You remember the day you all took the graduation exam? Up until that night he never knew why he was hated or who his parents were. Mizuki, the assistant to Iruka, tricked Naruto into stealing the forbidden scroll to pass the genin exam and learn one jutsu from it, which he did, Kujibunshin. Mizuki then proceeded to try and kill Naruto and Iruka, who showed up hunting Naruto for stealing the scroll and told him during the attack why he was hated. Naruto luckily had mastered the move and used it to save his and Iruka life. Naruto also that night unsealed a blood seal on the forbidden scroll that had his father's and mother's scrolls they left. Sakura listened and said, "Sir, I know a kunai and a scroll are different, and I know Naruto is not a demon, but can the demon get out?" The third sighed and said, "Truthfully, Sakura, If it could have escaped, it would have already, so since it can't, it is making it where Naruto lives longer. Sakura asked, "What do you mean, sir?" The third said, "It's simple, if Naruto dies, Kyuubi dies. Why do you think a demon would heal Naruto's body every time he has been attacked? It's to make sure he lives longer. Also, the seal is designed to allow Naruto to use the demon chakra, but he only can handle it for so long before it starts destroying his body because it's not human chakra, so you see, the demon can't escape unless someone messes with the seal like Orochimaru did in the forest, but that was only to stop Naruto from using the demon's chakra and to make killing Naruto easier. I already undid what Orochimaru did to Naruto, so don't be afraid of Naruto." Sakura said, "I won't, sir. I just wish he would have told me about us being related." The third said, "He wanted to but knew your mother would attack him again. In fact, that's as why he acted like he wanted to date you so he could be in your life." Sakura thought it over a few moments and said, "I think I understand, sir. So how long have Naruto and Kurenai been together, and do they have that mark thing my dad mentioned?" As her gossiping side came out. The third chuckled and said, "You want to know a little secret that only myself knows." Sakura's eyes gleamed and the third reached into his drawer and after a few moments pulled out a scroll and tossed it to Sakura and said, "People need to stop trusting an old man." As Sakura began reading it and went wide-eyed. She gaped and said, "You mean that?" The third nods and said, "Yeep. Now to answer your question, they do have that mark but they don't know about it. Since they passed out, they never saw the mark. The only ones who knew about the mark on them are Anko and Aruka and the two of us. If you want to tell them, go ahead, but do it discreetly, and I would suggest talking to Kurenai first. Naruto is not emotionally stable yet." Sakura looked at him and asked, "What do you mean, sir?" The third said, "Do you remember the wave mission?" Sakura nods and the third said, "When you, Sasuke, and Kakashi went to the bridge, Naruto started to come once he woke up. On his way to the bridge he saw signs of people heading back toward the client's home, so he went back. He found two mercs ready to kill the client's grandson and had the daughter prisoner. Naruto fought them and killed them to save the client's family." Sakura went wide-eyed and said, "But he never told any of us." The third looked down and covered his eyes with the hat and said, "He tried to tell Kakashi, but every time Naruto tried to get to him to talk privately about it, Kakashi would push him away to focus on Sasuke. It's why I am thinking of removing Kakashi as your team's sensei after the exam." Naruto was scared about it because he had to use the Kyuubi chakra to save himself and Sasuke from that girl they were fighting, and he could not talk to you or Sasuke about it because neither of you knew about the Kyuubi or what it's like to kill. When he returned, he was emotionally a wreck, but because his emotional mask he wears all the time is so good, none of you picked it up. I did, and I talked to him, and as he was leaving, Kurenai picked it up also. I won't tell you anything else about it though. You want answer, you will have to talk to them. I don't want you telling anyone about what you have heard about Naruto and Kurenai. I think I have kept you late enough anyways, and I am sure you have a lot to think about." Sakura nods and got up and left, taking her scroll and thinking over everything she heard. Across the village earlier, Hinata was walking thinking over what had happened earlier. She thought, Naruto-kun said that the only reason he never went after me was because he knew about my arranged marriage with Sasuke and my clan. If it was not for them, I would be with him instead of her. Maybe there is still some time, but how do I change things? That's it. As she stopped and headed toward the hospital. Once she got there, she grabbed a flower from the flowers in front of the hospital and went to the reception desk and said, "Excuse me, miss, what room is the sound ninjaku in?" The receptionist looked and said, "Hello, Hinata. Back already? He is in room 213, why?" Hinata said in a stuttery voice, "Well, I met him during the exams and I wanted to give him a flower to get well soon. Thank you." As she left toward the room. As she walked to the door, she saw he was sleeping and slowly snuck into the room. She then placed the flower on the table and looked around the room, finding Zaku cloths. She went through them until she found what she was looking for and quietly left the room. A shadow moved in the room and Zaku asked as he opened his eyes, what was that tree hugger doing, Kabuto? Kabuto said, she put a flower on your table and took your Hayate. Why, I don't know, but it's not important. Now as for you, Orochimaru has a use for you still. Zaku asked, what? My arms are destroyed. Kabuto smiled and stabbed Zaku in the heart and said, as a sacrifice, of course. Hinata pocketed the Hayate and left the hospital quickly. She then headed for her clan compound. Once she was inside, she quickly went for the basement of her clan compound. As heiress, she knew things that others besides her father didn't, and one of them was the clan's security system in case their clan compound was ever attacked, and the branch members would hold off the attackers while the main branch escaped and then set off the security system that would blow the entire clan compound away, killing whoever was inside, thus ensuring the main branch lived on and their bloodline was secure. She walked into the room where the seal to activate the explosives was, and following the instructions her father had told her at a young age, sent chakra into the seal for 45 minutes. After that, she left the compound again. Hinata then walked toward the Uchiha district and she saw Kakashi sitting outside the door. Kakashi looked at her and said, "Hello Hinata, what are you doing here?" Hinata said in a stuttery voice, "My family asked me to deliver a message to Sasuke about our arranged marriage. It's important and can't wait." Kakashi said, "So you and Sasuke are arranged? I never knew that." Hinata looked down and said, "It was arranged before we were born." "May I speak with him?" Still stuttering. Kakashi nods and motions for the door, and Hinata walks to it and knocks. A few moments later, Sasuke opens the door and glares, and Hinata said, "May I speak with you privately? I bring a message from my clan about our arranged marriage." Sasuke, and stood aside, and Hinata walked in. Sasuke then closed the door and said with his back to her, "What is it?" "I am busy." Hinata said with a little stutter, "My clan says that if you would agree to sire a child now, that they will give you access to all of our jutsu and techniques that are specifically made to kill Uchihas, so you may go after your brother. They told me to come and offer myself to you and use a jutsu to ensure I will become pregnant. They said if I return without being pregnant, then they declare you are breaking the contract and thus invoke the penalty agreed on by our clans, and you will be branded a branch member of the Hyuga clan." Sasuke turned and looked at Hinata, who was now standing in front of him, and he said, "I have no choice then. Come." As he walked toward the bedroom, Hinata followed slowly but looked at the clock and thought, 3 minutes to go. Hinata walked in and Sasuke closed the door and said, "Let's get this over with. I have things to do." As he reached for his shirt and started to pull it over his head. At that moment he stopped and coughed up blood, letting his shirt fall from his hand, and looked at Hinata, who had her palm on his chest, and he said, "Why?" as he fell to his knees before falling to the floor dead. Hinata left the room and grabbed the Hayate she had gotten earlier and was returning to the bedroom. Just then a huge explosion rocked all of Konoha, and Hinata walked back into the bedroom only to stop as she felt malice coming from beside her and saw Sasuke slowly standing up with black marks covering his body, and he pulled out a kunai and charged Hinata, who followed him with her bloodline, and sent another strike to his heart, destroying it, but Sasuke used the last of his strength to stab the kunai in her neck. As both fell to the floor, Hinata's last thoughts as a tear fell from her face was, "Take care of him for me, sensei," as she fell dead beside Sasuke, still holding the Hayate. Kakashi, who was outside when the explosion hit, quickly went toward the way it came from when he felt the curse seal on Sasuke activate, so he quickly turned around and went back and discovered the scene of Sasuke and Hinata dead, and saw Hinata holding something. When he looked at it, he narrowed his eyes and took it before shushing to the Hokage tower. When he arrived, he saw the third looking out the window and said, "Yes, Kakashi, what is it? I have an emergency right now." Kakashi said, "Sir, the explosion was a distraction, sir, and I fell for it." The third immediately turned and said, "What the hell do you mean a distraction? How can you say the destruction of the Hyuga clan was a distraction?" as he slammed his fist into his desk. Kakashi showed the headband and said, Hinata and Sasuke have both been assassinated, sir, and Hinata was holding this in her hand, obviously taken from her attacker before he fled. I felt Sasuke use the curse seal and Hinata had a kunai in her neck, sir. The third narrowed his eyes and said, what was the cause of Sasuke death, Kakashi? Kakashi said, I am not sure, sir. He had a black bruise over his chest sir, I think it was a Jiyuken strike to the heart. The third asked, what was Hinata doing there, Kakashi? Kakashi said, she came to discuss a matter her clan had about her arranged marriage to Sasuke, but he seemed to be busy with something, what I don't know, since I was allowing him privacy, and she was, sir, and Sasuke was without his shirt. The third was silent a moment and said, so it appears that Sasuke had indeed taken Orochimaru up on his offer. Foolish boy. Kakashi said, sir, what do you mean? The third said, simple, Kakashi. The destruction of the Hyuga clan was to weaken us for the invasion we are currently preparing for. They must have been waiting for the right moment and arranged this attack. Sasuke must have been preparing to defect and Hinata went to discuss whatever the Hyuga wanted, and Sasuke must have tried to rape her for his own deeds, possible to ensure his clan lives on. She must have used the explosion as a chance to kill him, but he killed her also. I must say this is a sad day for Konoha. Please go and have the Anbu take care of the bodies, and then you go and see if you can help locate any survivors. I want Hinata to be buried with full honor, but Sasuke will be cremated as a traitor to Konoha. Now go. I need a few moments alone. Kakashi nods and left, and the third thought, so Hinata, the lose of Naruto pushed you over the edge. I am sorry you did this, but there was nothing I could do for you or the dead. I just have to do what is best for those who are still alive, and I believe that by having Sasuke take the blame will be best, because if they discovered you were the real cause, then it would cause not only Naruto and Kurenai pain but also alienate all of Konoha against them even more. As he sat down and took out some tobacco and put it in his pipe before smoking it. Sakura was walking down the street heading for her home, deep in thought, when an explosion rocked all of Konoha. She quickly jumped up on a roof and gasped when it was the Hyuga compound. She quickly headed that way, and when she got there she saw Tenten on the ground crying, holding her knees to her chin, and she walked over and put her arms around the girl and asked, are you alright? Tenten looked up and continued to cry and said, Neji. Neji had just walked back inside when the explosion hit. I looked in, and she burst out crying, Aegean. Sakura held the girl, and after several minutes the girl had passed out, and Kakashi arrived and saw Sakura and said, Sakura, are you alright? What are you doing here? Sakura said, I am fine, but Tenten teammate Neji is dead. He had just went inside when the explosion hit. She passed out now. Can you help me get her to her house? I will stay with her tonight to make sure she's okay. Kakashi nods and picked up the girl, and both him and Sakura took off toward the wolf claw weapon shop. Back with Naruto and Kurenai. After Naruto cried and Kurenai held him until he passed out, she got up out of the tub and got him out of it still in his female form and took him to his room and laid him down on the bed. She then went and was changing when an explosion rocked all of Konoha. She went to check on Naruto and saw he was still out and thought, between all his training and emotional battle earlier, he needs some rest. Besides, someone might try and blame him for whatever that was, as she quickly started to leave. On her way by roof she saw Sakura and Tenten with Kakashi, and she veered over to them, and Kakashi stopped and Kurenai asked, what's going on, Kakashi? Kakashi said, the Hyuga compound has been destroyed. The Sandaime believes it was Orochimaru. Kurenai gasped and said, Hinata, oh god, is she okay? As she started to go toward the compound. Kakashi said, wait, Hinata was not there, Kurenai. Kurenai turned and said, well, where is she? Kakashi sighed and said, dead. Kurenai had tears in her eyes and said, how? Kakashi glanced at Sakura and said, Sasuke killed her. Making both gasp. Sakura said, but why? Why would he kill her? Kakashi said, Hinata came over to talk to Sasuke about something clan related. When the explosion hit, I went to investigate it when I felt Sasuke use the curse seal. When I got back, Hinata, as he tried to think what to say. Kurenai said, yes, Hinata, what? Kakashi, spit it out. Kakashi said, it appears Sasuke was planning to defect from Konoha, but before he left he wanted to ensure his clan survived, so he. Kurenai eyes went wide and gasped and said, no, he didn't, as she fell to her knees. Just then a figure landed on the rooftop behind them and Sakura said, Kushina, what are you doing here? Kushina ignored them and walked over to Kurenai and put her arms around her and said, did he do it, Kakashi? Did he rape her? Kakashi asked. Who are you? Trying to figure out why this woman looked so familiar. Kushina said, a friend of Kurenai and Hinata as well as a genin of Konoha. The Sandaime can tell you all about me later, but please, we need to know about Hinata. Kakashi said, it appears when he went to take his cloths off and the explosion hit, Hinata had taken that moment to try and stop him and used a Juyuken strike to the heart to stop him, however he used the kunai to kill her also. I am sorry. As he looked away. Kushina nods and said, what about Tenten, what happened to her? Sakura said, her teammate Neji died in the explosion. I am going over to her house to make sure she is okay. Kushina nods and said, come on Tenshi, let's go back to the house, as she helped Kurenai up and went away. Sakura saw the look each had as they left and she thought about Sasuke, her heart filled with rage. Sakura thought, Sasuke, how could you do that to her, you bastard? I loved you and you tried to leave and then hurt someone as innocent as Hinata. If you were alive I would kill you. Kakashi said, Sakura, why don't you go get your things and I will stay with Tenten until you get there? You sort of don't have anything with you for tonight. Sakura thought and nods before leaving, and when she got home her mother was in the kitchen and sighed and said, thank God you're home, Sakura, I was worried about you. Sakura thought back to what her dad had said and she walked past her mom and went to her room and started to pack her things. She thought, damn her lies, I can't believe her. I can't live here any longer. As she grabbed her things and got ready to leave. As she walked toward the door her mother stopped her and said, Sakura, where do you think you're going? Sakura said, I am leaving, something's come up. As she started to leave Aegean. Sakura mother said, no you're not Sakura, you're not going out there, you never know what kind of monsters or demons are just waiting for you. Sakura clenched her fist and said, you would be surprised what kind of monsters there are in the world. You know, now that I think about it our eyes are perfect to represent you, mother. Sakura mother said, what do you mean, dear? Sakura pulled out a stick of lipstick and walked to the mirror and drew a spiral and said, I am disappointed in you, mother, to think, having a child just so you could get rich and have power. As she walked away from her stunned mother and out the door. Her mom thought, oh God, she knows. I admit at first I was that way, but I have changed. I do love her. How did she find out? She then ran out of the house and saw Sakura up the street and ran to her and ran in front of her and said, wait dear, how did you find out? Sakura threw her father's scroll to her mother who took it and read it thanks to the well-lighted streets and said, oh God, Sakura, please let me explain. Sakura said, explain what? That you refused to allow me to have my family because of some stupid fear, that you blackmailed the Hokage and his wife threatening to sell out their family just to get political power, that you conceived a child only so you could steal a fortune from another country, and that you have passed your hate to me also so I would be fearful of my own blood. Her mother said, Sakura, I admit I did do all that when I was younger and foolish. You have to understand that I was desperate back then. I had no job, no money, I was living with a friend and had to do things I never would speak of Aegean just so I could survive, so when I found out about them and about your father I needed a way to save myself, so I did what I had to. I know your father hated me and I know what I did was wrong, but had I not done it then I would never have had a daughter like you or been able to take care of us like I have. I also know what I did to your cousin was wrong and I actually don't see him that way, but you have to understand if people found out the truth then they would have hurt you to get to him and I couldn't have that, so I acted like they did so that way the Hokage would never ask me Aegean. I am just thankful he never found out about it. Sakura said. That's where you're wrong, mother. He was in the next room that day all those years ago and heard you say it all. As she looked at her mother. Her mom said, Oh God, Sakura, I am so sorry. I never wanted this to be like this. Please, don't leave me alone. I am not an evil woman. I admit I have made mistakes and I will do anything to correct them. Please don't hate me. Sakura looked up at the night sky and said, Mom, I don't know what to think right now. So much shit has happened today I don't know if I even care anymore. I find out my own teammate is my cousin, has a demon sealed in him, had an awful life, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Then a little later I find out the man I thought I loved planned to leave Konoha but not before trying to rape a friend of mine. Sakura mother's eyes went wide hearing this and Sakura continued and said, on top of that another friend of mine watched as her teammate and crush was killed in an explosion that looks like killed his entire family and now she's waiting at her house with my sensei for me to come and be there for her and you ask me to act like everything is alright. I can't right now, Mom. If you want to make things up with me while I try and get my head straight, why don't you go and try and make things right with my cousin? Now that I know about him I am not going to leave him alone, Aegean. If you can patch things with him then that will be a step in the right direction for me. As she turned and walked away. Her mom thought, Sakura, I am sorry for what I done to you and your cousin. You have to understand I did what I thought was best. I see now that good intentions don't always make the best solutions. I will make it up to you both, even if it cost me my life. As she turned and walked toward her home. Back with Naruto and Kurenai, Naruto still in his female form held Kurenai tightly in his arms as they sat on the floor. Kurenai had her knees to her face crying as she was in between Naruto's legs. Naruto held her and said, Tenshi, I know how much she meant to you. She also meant a lot to me but I don't think she would want us to be sad for her. I mean she was a kind spirit and would always try to make others happy. Just let it go tonight and tomorrow we will honor her memory the way she would want, by going forward and being happy. Remember her last words to us. She wanted us to make each other happy. I think we should do that and if we ever have a daughter we should name her after Hinata in her memory so that way she will always be with us. Kurenai smiled as the tears slowed and said, I like that idea Naru-kun but tonight just hold me. As she leaned into his embrace and they held each other close as they fell asleep.